For some of you that I've not met, I'm Jonathan Ortmans, and I'm the chair of the Global Entrepreneurship Congress and president of the Global Entrepreneurship Network. And I'm very, very honored to have the opportunity to welcome you to today's State and Local Policy Summit. I'd like, if I can, just to give a little bit of context here. Of course, we come from the entrepreneurship world at the Global Entrepreneurship Network, where the majority of our communities are grassroots communities, people figuring out better ways of doing things, and creating the future, creating opportunity, and creating new products and services. We believe, however, that government has an important role to play in helping to ensure that that is encouraged in our citizens, and that if we have barriers in front of them to entrepreneurship, that we look to remove those barriers, to make it easier for the citizens in our states to be able to take this journey. We actually began this organization as a grassroots movement of mostly youth. We did it through something called Global Entrepreneurship Week every November. It still happens, and it happens here in Indiana. And I've heard from many of the parts of Indiana this week about why it's instrumental in bringing their community together once a year to celebrate their entrepreneurs and encourage more of their citizens to take the path of entrepreneurship. But what that did is it created a community of people who ultimately like this process of figuring out better ways of doing things. And we are very, very proud that that community has grown into what is now many thousands of organizations, indeed around the world, not just around the United States, who believe in advancing the great pioneering spirit that has built this country. And so it's with great honor that we bring you here to gather around this table. I want to point out this is a tradition of the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, which, thanks to the Hoosier hospitality, is really for the first time being held in the United States. We did actually kick it off at the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City about 15 years ago, but I think we had 56 people. So since then, it has grown substantially. We were just a startup ourselves. But we are extremely proud of this format, which we do at every Congress, which is to allow us to be looking at each other, hearing each other, and this table is used often for many nations that do not agree with each other to come together and to look for common ground around how they can support their entrepreneurs. It's one of the areas that we don't compete on in the world, and it's one of the areas where we think it's very powerful as states too, that we can look at how can we learn from each other and how can we create opportunity for our citizens. So with that, I want to, if I can, introduce Governor Mike Braun, who is indeed our host. Governor, we can't tell you enough on behalf of all the people here, and I hope if you had more time that you would speak to each of them, because we're so proud of the joy and happiness that I think people have had this week, but also the value proposition of this event. And it really was made possible through your leadership and your kindness to host this event in Indiana. I want to pay tribute to your excellent staff and teams. They had exactly the right balance of guiding us on what we needed to do, but then occasionally getting out the way and letting us bring some of the expertise we hope we can bring to the event. But Governor, I want to say thank you so much indeed on behalf of everybody for hosting us. Thank you for your presence at this event, which we think is just vital for us understanding how we grow our entrepreneurs in our communities across the United States. And so I hope we'll have an opportunity to make this the beginning of more interaction. We want to bring more people from around the country to Indiana, and we very much look forward to welcoming you at future gatherings where that's of value to you. So thank you so much indeed for having us. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Governor Mike Braun.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure just a couple days ago coming in and having a discussion as well. I've been, other than when I had the crazy idea of getting into government and politics roughly 10 years ago as a state legislator, and then ran for Senate back in 17 and 18. My life was spent as a serial entrepreneur. Now that you're leading the state, it's an easy discussion, but I drift back 50 years ago when I think of how much I changed in terms of what I was wanting to do and had no idea I'd end up being an entrepreneur until I basically got through business school. And, I went to college to be a doctor as a biology major, then a political science major. I think I was going to be a lawyer. They both seemed like it wasn't going to work out. I remember thinking about going to law school and business school, went to business school, thought you'd end up being a captain of industry. Well, 50 years ago, the word entrepreneur was not even really understood. What is it? Well, I took the first course there, and it was a small part of our business school class. I can tell you the ones that probably have had the most notable careers would have been part of that ragtag class back then in terms of what they ended up doing. My case, moved back to my hometown and recall vividly that you were just on your own. It's in your DNA if you want to buck security and throw your great idea out there. We all know the statistics of how hard it is to get past the first year or two, not to mention 5 years and 10 years. The culling rate is really significant. I don't recall anyone knocking on my door in Indiana because, ironically, we're a state, and I think it begs the question, why wouldn't we be doing more? FedEx told me probably 10 years ago that we're in the center of commerce. Logistically, you can reach 70 to 80% of U.S. commerce within 2 days of ground transportation. Of course, I had a logistics company. That sounded neat. But I remember how almost everything we did was done organically, and it didn't have any superstructure. It didn't get, other than maybe a tax abatement. You were interacting with your local government. And now that I'm at the helm of a state that's got one of the best environments for startups, ironically, either we're measuring it wrong or something's afoot that we've got one of the lowest rates of it. So, David, that's something that you and I will work on. We started off by within our Secretary of Commerce, that silo, there's a new Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and there's a lot that we can do. And then you got to be careful. We were talking about it earlier. Government can't run the show. It generally is your impediment. And I had a business that was in one location for 17 years, and after about 17 years, we started growing into other states. And I remember the environment was different in each state. So wherever you go, and if you go beyond your narrow horizon, if it's a scalable business that will work like that, and ironically, most startups probably never leave their Main Street location. And startups need nurturing if they're going to do something that is scalable. And generally, the element always comes down to capital. And if you're not real good at internally generating it, you're probably going to be in a pickle, because one of the things I say without exception is get your line of credit when you don't need it. When you need it, you probably won't get it. Nobody gives you that advice until you go in when you're wanting to spread your wings. So my goal as governor, being one of the few governors, believe it or not, that's actually signed the front side of a paycheck. You'd think that that would almost be a requisite. Normally, you become a senator almost 100% by pivoting right out of law school into elected or appointed office. Governors generally come from that same background. In other words, government in general, legislatures are not equipped to really know what small businesses need, entrepreneurs, because they don't have the lobbyists. Nobody's out there knocking on their door, and it's just now arrived to where it's probably the most popular pursuit and still doesn't have the superstructure out there that's in place. So I intend to craft that here in Indiana. You're welcome to come back and do this every year, and I'll give you even more time, and you can measure what we're doing. But I'll end on a few things. There's got to be a good way to measure if you're successful or not. To me, it's difficult because so many of the operations never get to venture capital. They don't register as a startup. Their investment capital has been sweat equity, and sooner or later they blossom into something. So one of our goals would be local governments. Let's kind of look at it as the analog of junior achievement. We're out there trying to get kids to think about maybe running their own business. Then they get into where they're going to school and come back. For me, I forced my way into just hanging out that shingle. And it was treacherous. But we need to do a little bit of help without trying to get too involved and find that sweet spot. And I think you're the entity that can be the narrator and have the narrative of how to do it. I look forward to continuing the discussion.
Governor, thank you very much indeed. If I could also add, we want to thank the First Lady for coming here to participate in this event too. Yesterday, it's great to have another small business person there, and we greatly appreciate it. I wanted just to have a chance to say one thing and then turn it over to Victor. We are very proud that this gathering came together as a result of Jen's partnership with Right to Start. One of the things that I think has assembled here this week is an extraordinary amount of talent about how do you actually walk that fine line perfectly between making sure that you're giving just enough support and not too much. And I know that they're doing a lot of work with us on measurement too. So we'll see if we can get to the bottom of that data question. We've got others out there. I know Startup Genome, a few other actors are here today that are actually grappling with that same question. So Governor, thank you so much indeed. Well, I'm very happy to turn over to my colleague, Victor Huang. As all of you probably here know, Right to Start is another startup, but has done a tremendous job at fostering this dialogue across the United States. So Victor, thank you so much for your partnership. We look forward to working with you on what comes out of this, and I'll turn it over to you from here. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, Governor. It's indeed an honor to have you here, especially as someone with deep roots as a serial entrepreneur. It really means a lot to have someone in your leadership. As you mentioned, this Office of Entrepreneurship, and this was actually something you had talked about even before you got into office in January. And then, as you know, it's been enacted into law as well in support of that work that you believe in. Can you talk a bit about what entrepreneurship means to you and what this Office of Entrepreneurship means to you?
So what it meant to me was back then, as I described, with hardly anything other than just pure gumption. I come from an entrepreneurial town, so I was blessed there. I didn't realize it, had to kind of put two and two together with it. But what this means is that we're finally taking, I think, a career path that many that go to a business school want to end up having. And you would be the start of, and this, to where there's a formal discussion of it. Because I mentioned that statistic about how hard it is to grow it, survive. I think of the elements for me that were so important, and I didn't really learn that in business school. I only took one course on entrepreneurship, and back then it was management consulting, finance, which I think is probably the most important thing you've got to understand beyond the enthusiasm of what you want to start a business around. So many businesses are started because you're an enthusiast, and you'll find out that you maybe haven't sized up the market, how many other enthusiasts are in your area. The ones that are generally the easiest to enter are the ones that have the highest fatality rate. So those are all kind of questions that'd be neat if you had a mentor, if you had some type of like I say, we do a pretty good job of it in Indiana, on getting kids interested in it, but then they get into the pipeline, and we don't even do a really good job, and we're trying to fix that on, are you going to be cut out for that? Is workforce development and maybe finding a trade where you're going to enter the real world, and then maybe you want to do something on your own. So there's a lot of moving parts. It's amorphous, and to me, this is the first attempt that I was aware of, because I had to read what it was actually happening here, and I was excited, is the more framework and structure we can put out there with organizations like yours, schools that give it more than lip service, and then local governments finding out how to nurture it. I can tell you, we don't want larger government getting involved with it. They don't get much done very well, very effectively. I think a state template is important, and we'll be one of the first states that puts formality to it. So,
I love that, and it seems like there's so much passion you have for entrepreneurship and the means of supporting it. Do you have a vision for what the role of government could look like in supporting entrepreneurship? What a vision for that Office of Entrepreneurship might look like?
So it will be hopefully in the equivalent status eventually of any of the other kind of major business career path trajectories. I think that took the first class offered then. You know, I don't hear of many classes in high school that would focus on entrepreneurship. Generally, again, that would be an individual that thinks they want to do it, and then they get involved in an apprenticeship or do something on their own. So put a degree of formality to it, knowing that there's nothing that has a more shapeless trajectory in terms of how it ends up. And then having those basic things that you need to have available to nurture so many of these businesses that won't be in the category of venture capital. That's generally something that's got a very significant technological element to it, and capital will find it. Those are unique. I'm looking at how do you take folks, and I'm amazed how I still run into people that have a new concept on convenience stores. One just cut the ribbon on in Indiana called Wawa. Hadn't heard of it. But I walked in there, and heck, it's a place I think I'd want to go to get gas just to go into the, everything they had inside. And I said, couldn't be a lower margin business, but they're rolling out 50 new stores. Entities like that, individuals like that, and I can't give you a solid kind of roadmap yet. We're in the very early stages of laying it out.
Well, even at some point, Sam Walton was, a pioneer in the concept of what he's doing, and there's always room to innovate.
One other thing I'll say that, because I have to leave at 9:30, but change is inevitable. Once you get your idea down, hardest thing in any business is revenue generation. That's why I say government's so easy. We're the monopoly. Just don't spend more than you take in. Well, if you're not good at that, you're going to be on the ash heap of whatever your enterprise is out of the gate. Controlling costs, living within your means, reinvesting every penny. I built that company over 37 years at an average growth rate of 18% in revenues. It was profitable every year. Leverage technology into trucking and warehousing, fancy names, logistics and distribution. And had I not done that, and I was a foot dragger because it was expensive, it changed every 3 to 4 years. Well, my son got educated by my brother on technology, and my younger son now fills the role that I did. They get along, but we built it on the house and the foundation of technology. And literally, when I still had 15 employees, our technology would have been Radio Shack. And then we ended up knowing we needed more and built it on Great Plains, our customizable platform. So technology is going to be inevitable in most of what you do. Get comfortable with it, get comfortable with change. Cul-de-sac of revenue production is easy to enter into, because every 3 to 5 years, things change. And then for anyone that wants to be an entrepreneur, and for any of the governments that are there to try to nurture it, risk and risk assessment and your appetite for it, probably the biggest differentiator for how far you're going to take it. When I think of some of the things I did in terms of taking risk, it was always interesting because I said, damn, did I actually do that? And I had no board of directors. I had no consultants because I chose to kind of take that pathway. There's a lot more out there now that can help you. And we're here to find out how we might do it gently through especially local government, state government. Don't involve the other place. That thing's a basket case that doesn't understand Finance 101 or macroeconomics. So this to me is a great start.
And that Indiana legislation that created the Office of Entrepreneurship, it was passed nearly unanimously through the legislature, including actually unanimously in the Senate. That reflects our polling. We've done national polling, and 94% of Americans say entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial opportunity is fundamental to the future of our country.
That's because everybody knows Main Street is what built the country. Main Street's so often out on its own. The number of bureaucratic issues I hear with local governments still that make it hard rather than easy. That's all something we need to navigate through, and I think each state has got its own ability to do it. The one that really gets it together will show that extra normal economic growth in their own GDP. And I can't wait to see how Indiana is going to be right there at the top of the heap.
So it doesn't surprise you how bipartisan this issue is?
No, because it ranks right up there with term limits and a balanced budget amendment, which is what I said. Our basic challenge is going to be what they're wrestling with now. And there were only 3 or 4 of us that had any understanding of macroeconomics. There were only 3 or 4 of us that had recently signed the front side of a paycheck in the U.S. Senate, and we don't have enough governors that have done that. I think we're at a pivot point that takes us back where the founders intended. Remember, they didn't even have a source of revenue till 13, and the action is always from the street up. And those local governments that I think are agile themselves, we just had a spirited discussion on property taxes, how much revenue you need. All of that has to be in balance. But when you think about it, it's common sense. What's going to help that Main Street business make a living for most of those owners without being surrounded by red tape and complications? And then for those few that squeak through to scale their businesses, it's even harder to make sure you're keeping an eye on them. We statistically house more large companies than any other state. I was shocked by that, but that's because it is a good business environment. And hopefully that's because we're just under measuring the number of startups and small businesses. So we got to figure out that metric as well, and we'll work on that.
Yeah. One last question. Yesterday, we launched a national campaign. This is a national campaign around entrepreneurship in celebration of America's 250th birthday coming up. We call it America the Entrepreneurial. What are the lessons that the rest of the country could learn from Indiana and your own experience that could be applicable as part of this national campaign?
So I'd say just watch. I've been out there, put a little bit on the line about what we intend to do. 49 other laboratories. See, the governor from Arkansas is here. Good to see you, Asa. Every state's got its own comparative advantage. It's not hard to see where some people are walking to maybe get away from the overbearing presence of government, not to mention stifling tax rates. There's a sweet spot. And like I mentioned earlier, you got to keep local governments healthy. School districts want to make sure when it comes to honesty with parents and kids, we need to have a system that's going to say you can be a small business owner and an entrepreneur, more than just the fact that it's kind of hot and fancy now. And then we got to make sure what's most important to most families, your health as you get older, that's more important generally, and your edification, your education. And so often we've not aligned K through 12 education, especially middle school through high school, giving what are those high demand, high wage jobs, how do you get there to what you want to do so that you don't end up sending kids down a pathway where currently in Indiana, 50% of the kids that pursue a 4-year degree don't make it to the finish line. They've lost time and money, so they needed better guidance when they were in middle school and high school, so they're not starting behind the starting line as opposed to being in the right place due to the fact that the educational side of our life is dovetailing with what your state needs. That means STEM degrees, that means get a skill. If you don't have something else defined in mind, because if you're good as an employee, you're gonna get your employer to put you through college, and you can always become an entrepreneur. Many people do it late in life. I and my wife just started early, and it was an interesting journey. Look where it can take you.
Well, Governor, your personal story is so inspiring. Your passion for entrepreneurship is so inspiring, and what you're trying to do for entrepreneurs here in Indiana is very inspiring. We're grateful for having you here today with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And I am turning it over to my colleague, Kim Lane, our Chief Operating Officer at Right to Start.
Hi, everyone. We had just a really small schedule change, so we're going to move into our first moderated discussion, and I'm just going to go ahead and set kind of the stage for the rest of the day. So we'll have 3 moderated discussions, each are 30 minutes long. The format is we want everyone to talk and engage. We may have a couple of people that we kind of start the conversation with, but after that, please jump in. And then the flow of the conversations starts kind of big picture with entrepreneur-led economic development. Then we shift into entrepreneurial policy, and then we end with implementation. So after I speak, I'm going to turn over to my colleagues to kind of set the stage and the playing field for the stats behind this work and why it matters. But we're going to go ahead and move into the economic development discussion. And I'll just start by saying, at Right to Start, we talk about this stat a lot, which is the majority of new jobs come from new companies, but the system makes it too hard to start and grow. Only 18% of Americans know that new jobs come from new companies. Most people think they come from big companies. Right to Start conducted a nonpartisan poll a couple of years ago, and we found that 15 million businesses didn't start because of red tape and high fees and the fear of losing health care. What we're seeing across the country is a shift to more entrepreneur-led economic development. So instead of attraction and retention, it's more focused on entrepreneurs. So to kick off the discussion, we're pleased to have the Secretary of Commerce with us today for the state of Indiana. And what an interesting background you have. A lifelong entrepreneur, awarded Indiana's leading entrepreneurial business mentor. You led the formation of Cincinnati's Innovation District. And now your whole role is focused on building an entrepreneurial ecosystem in the state of Indiana. Can you just talk about why does this matter to you personally and the state?
Well, so first, here we go. Technology, right? It all starts with technology. Hey, good morning and welcome. Glad to have you here. Candidly, being a lifelong entrepreneur, I grew up actually in the tech space as a tech executive. And, there's a lot of focus on, tech startups and a lot of energy around venture capital. And we've got incubators, accelerators, we've got all kinds of great things. But here in Indiana, we also have 570,000 small to mid-sized businesses that are led by entrepreneurs. And we also know there's going to be a big turnover in those businesses as those entrepreneurs age out. And so how do we inspire those 25, 35, 45, and 55-year-old individuals to understand that there's another path for you? And what are the resources that are going to be required in order to accomplish that? And so we spend a lot of time, I think, and energy on somebody who's starting a business. But I would contend the entrepreneurs out there that have an existing business, one, how do we better as a state support those entrepreneurs? But as importantly, for the individuals who can see that as a career path, how do we help inspire them that there are resources that will help support them in their journey? And how do we make this a one-stop shop? I mean, I think that's the other big piece of this. Where do I go when I want to either A, start a business or potentially buy a business or expand a business? Here in the state of Indiana, from an economic development standpoint, we really want to find ways to eliminate and reduce the friction that these organizations face. And like I said, how do we stand up? I mean, one of the things here in the Midwest, and I don't know how it is in your other states or regions, but we're a very humble state. there's a lot of great things going on here. We got to show and illustrate to others the wonderful things happening here and inspire others that this is a possibility for you too. That you don't have to have a PhD to actually go out and do something. You don't have to work at a university to go do something. You don't have to have an MBA from a major university. How do we help support you in your journey? But as importantly, how do we help really stand you up to inspire others who might see this as a career path? So we got to do a lot more in that arena as well, and we're going to go do it. And the governor may have shared with you, we formally have stood up now. The Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship is going to report to me, and it's going to be focused on Main Street entrepreneurs. So in addition to all the venture capital work we're doing, we're really going to focus on those Main Street entrepreneurs and let folks know that we want to be a beacon, a front door to help support that journey.
Fantastic, and I think the legislation is being signed into law like today.
That's why the governor left. He's doing it at 10 o'clock.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can you talk about specific ways that, like how will that office shape the state's impact on entrepreneurs, and what is your vision for it?
Yeah, so we haven't had this office before. I mean, right, it's just been combined. If you think about the small business development corporations, it's been combined in with everything else. So we're going to have a leader that's really going to help understand what are we doing throughout the state, where are the gaps, and that's not just us looking at it. That's really us talking to everyday entrepreneurs and understanding what are the challenges they're having in either expanding their businesses, growing their businesses, or if somebody wants to acquire a business, how do we help support those journeys? So we're going to do an assessment to kind of understand where we're at. We're going to understand, too, where the friction points in this process are at, and then we're going to work aggressively to correct those. And as I said, I want to make sure that we stand up these stories as well so that we can help on a regional basis. Because let's face it, this is not a statewide activity, it's a regional activity. So we're also, as a state, going to start focusing regionally in terms of these ecosystems and really work within the communities to understand what's genuine and authentic to the community. And not what's genuine and authentic to us as a state, but what's genuine and authentic to that community, and how do we support things on a regional basis. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, because the state economy really is made up of a series of regional economies. And we need to understand what are the things that are happening within those regions. Best way to do that, we got to get out and listen. So that's going to be another key component of what this office is going to do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Secretary Adams. I know I promised an open dialogue. I have one more question before I open it up to Governor Asa Hutchinson, former governor of Arkansas, my former governor. You did so much in Arkansas to establish an environment that supported entrepreneurs. And can you just talk about the tactical things that you did and the difference that made?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here, Mr. Secretary.
Pleasure.
And congratulations to Governor Braun and what you're doing in Indiana. In terms of Arkansas, I got elected 2014. I became governor 2015, term limits after 2 terms. But during that time, I wanted to be the jobs governor. And as you pointed out, Kim, you can bring big business in, you can expand your existing businesses, but ultimately it's about entrepreneurs, it's about startup companies, it's about that ecosystem that is so important. And so I focused on that. And of course, Arkansas has a pretty good history along that line with Sam Walton, who's been mentioned today. Great entrepreneur, but Don Tyson, Tyson's Foods, J.B. Hunt Trucking, all of those are just simply startup companies, literally startup companies that grew into global enterprises. And so it is the startup community that's so important. And the tech side of it can't be ignored. So you have, somebody starts a restaurant, somebody starts some other type of business, they have some momentum, but the tech community needs a lot of support. And so we, first of all, looked at computer science education and said, we got to have the talent in order to expand the tech industry in Arkansas. You've got to have the capital formation and the availability, access to cash, and you got to have the community that GEC is doing such an incredible job of creating and Right to Start. So whenever I started, we have 1,100 students across Arkansas taking computer science. And we were the first state to mandate computer science to be taught in every high school. We went from 1,100 students to 25,000 students. And let me tell you, whenever those students realize they can develop a skill, they can be an entrepreneur, that helps sets the climate for startup companies in the state because it teaches them entrepreneurship as well. And so it was an exciting road. We created through the accelerator program access to capital where we brought startup companies together. You put them with potential investors, let them make their pitch, and you develop that community of support. And it just takes one of those to be a success that really changes the climate in the state. And so all of those things we tried to do. There's much more needs to be done in terms of the spirit of community of the startup companies. I love what we do with Economics Arkansas. I love what our economic development is doing with the small businesses, but there's more to be done, and I think that's what the GEC and Right to Start is all about and is going to set the stage for us.
Thank you. One follow-up question. Can you speak a bit to the accelerator programs that you helped stand up as governor, and specifically the industry partnerships with accelerators?
Well, first of all, we put $2 million into an accelerator program. Not a huge amount in terms of the entire budget, but in tight times, that's what we could do. But it was incredible the results of that, because we said we're going to put money into accelerator programs. We're going to put half of it in, and industry has to put half in. And so FIS, which is the financial services software company, they partnered with us, and we created a financial services industry tech accelerator program. And we've done that every year, and literally people all over the globe will come in because they can market their new software idea. They have investors there, and you got to market there. We did that also with the healthcare industry, where we have built in with our medical community and hospitals a marketplace for them. You've got investors there, and you've got those that have a great idea that's a little bit more than just an idea. It's actually producing some. And so we've mirrored that time and time again through the years. And so, the accelerator program is a good investment, and you have to have the metrics. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this, Kim, that Apogee you started with in one of your accelerators programs there in Conway. And they started it, and I was able to join them with their 100th employee. And they're a great success story. Now, you could probably point to some others that fell by the wayside, but that was the success of the accelerator program, putting startup companies with capital, with a community, and with the opportunity to market their idea.
Fantastic, thank you. We're going to open it up for just open discussion. So whenever you want to speak, can you just kind of wave at me and I'll call on you? Yes.
Good morning. As a proud Hoosier, it's been great meeting people from all across the world this past week in Indianapolis and welcome you here. I'm the mayor of a community about 2 hours northeast of here, the city of New Haven, Indiana. And I just want to add on Governor Hutchinson's comments. I had the opportunity to go on a FAM tour last month to Little Rock, North Little Rock, and Conway. And amazing things happen in Arkansas. This is how we learn. We learn from each other. There are great things happening across Indiana, across the United States, across the world, and this is how we learn. I want to follow up on what Secretary Adams said. In 2021, the Northeast Indiana Strategic Development Commission was formed. I was one of the original and still 9 voting members of that body. Representative Teska and others took a bold move then and voted in favor of creating this regional entity to look at things like entrepreneurship, innovation, housing. And we've been working on this now for 5 years. We did a strategic plan. We're doing a SWOT analysis now. Northeast Indiana is home to so many entrepreneurs over the years. You heard from Zimmer Biomet the other day. Philo Farnsworth lived in Fort Wayne. Chuck Surak, many of you probably have heard of Sweetwater Sound. The largest music company in the world is headquartered in Northeast Indiana. My message is I came here to learn. It's been a great experience, and thank you to IEDC for bringing Gen 2025 to Indiana, because it has been a great experience. We all learned from each other. The other thing about Arkansas that I found really, really great was the academies for the schools. We toured North Little Rock High School. Great things happening. This is how we learn. This is how we do better for our communities. And I agree completely with Governor Braun. This starts local with local government. I'll end with this. We have a philosophy in the city of New Haven. It's very simply, let's get to the yes. What that means is no red tape. Let's figure out how to get it done. Let's achieve the objectives of the investor, the entrepreneur, while maintaining the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
And can I ask, so what are you most excited about? So we've got city and we've got state, and I think that's a really powerful combination.
I'm really excited about the emphasis on regions, because the different regions across the street obviously have different attributes, different ideas, and different histories. So I think that's how we move Indiana forward, and I'm really excited about this, and it's been an honor to serve on the Northeast Indiana Strategic Development Commission as we look holistically across the region. We're a community of 16 or 17,000. There's only so much we can do, but we're a region of 800,000. When we collectively work together, there's so much we can do. The REDO, the Regional Economic Development Organization, their motto is Pioneer Starts Here. And I love that. Now, some people are confused by that and they think they're out in the prairie. But the whole thing about Pioneer, we're doing things differently. We're on the cutting edge.
Just a couple of really quick housekeeping things. If you want to speak, you can actually just do this, and that's how. And then also, would you just mind stating your name and where you're from whenever you jump into the discussion? Taylor Overton, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you talk about, so I should mention too, Right to Start recently launched a network, the National Entrepreneurship Leaders Network, and these are the state officials leading entrepreneurial offices and centers. And it's partly because, Heather, to your point of how do you kind of pull all these best practices together. And so this is one way to do it, is to build this national network. And Taylor is our co-chair of that network. Can you speak to why this entrepreneur-led economic development is important to the state of Kansas?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. So, like Kim said, my name is Taylor Overton, Kansas Department of Commerce. I lead the Office of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. And for us, the very first call that we had with Indiana, they were talking about hosting GEC as a part of their strategy and a part of the framework of building out this larger thing that truly solves a problem for entrepreneurs. For so long, we have gone in circles, and I found testimony my mom gave to the legislature in 2011, and every single word still stands true to this day. How do we solve those things and then look at the next challenge to solve? So positioning this with this approach from an entrepreneurial mindset is extremely important to us. And so after we heard Indiana say hosting GEC is a part of our strategy, we formed a delegation to bring here of entrepreneurs. We brought 52 entrepreneurs. We sponsored Indiana. We bothered them of what can we do to support you to show up and really position the individuals that are solving problems in our communities, the entrepreneurs, the doers, to gain a global view of success. So then when we go back home, it's not just this ecosystem, this space where we've been operating on our own. It is positioned from the global view and an entrepreneurial lens that can really put solutions to the problems that we've been facing and our entrepreneurs have been facing for generations. Yeah.
Thank you, Taylor. I'm just going to pose a question to the group, which is, we heard about industry accelerators. We've talked about junior achievement, academies starting at the high school level and lower in terms of teaching entrepreneurship. Are there any other best practices from your states and cities that others in the room could learn from and benchmark? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Carol Gonzalez. I'm with the city of Omaha, Nebraska. In our city, we have seen that there's a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses starting their operations, but a lot of times they feel discouraged because there are thankfully in our city, there's a lot of resources and tools, but there was not a hub that will actually, promote all of this information and programs. And so we were part of a few cohorts with the National League of Cities, which we have here, Corinne, and we were able to develop a platform. It's a website that streamlines the process for entrepreneurs to do business in our city, from regulations, how to be compliant with permitting, and how to start, the formation of a business. So I think a lot of times cities, can be just the main hub, the host of all of the ESOs operating in our communities, and make that journey easier for entrepreneurs. In addition to that, we want to inject the city money into our local economies. So we created a program, it's called the Small and Emerging Business Program, in which we help small businesses have access to city contracts. So every time that the city is building a new development or a project, we identify opportunities where we can introduce small businesses as part of the projects. Because yes, it's important to bring other bigger, large companies into our city projects, but we also want to make sure that our local businesses are benefiting from our funds and everything that we're doing in the city. So of that way, we actually, that program became an ordinance. So it's now required to use small businesses on city projects. And that's the way that we enforce that. Just like the federal government, they have the minority, women-owned certifications. We just created that based on the income levels of entrepreneurs and their local businesses. And lastly, we have the Economic Equity and Inclusion Program. That program is mostly for applied to larger businesses, those who get awarded a contract that is $650,000 in construction or $150,000 in professional services, but we want to make sure that those larger companies are giving back to the community. So in the areas with highest levels of poverty, we encourage them to have a small business utilization, so they have to include small businesses as they are working on city projects or outside of city projects. We also encourage them to have youth engagement, so whether it's mentoring or funding grants, and lastly, workforce development. So we encourage them to have apprenticeship programs. Just make sure that, a lot of times, professional career is not the path for all of the students. And so we encourage them to introduce the trades and help them see that at one point they can become an entrepreneur and have actually another company. So couple different initiatives that we have applied so we can actually give back to our community and make sure that small businesses are growing and they're also giving back by hiring people from the local economy.
Fantastic. Yeah. Those are great examples. Thank you so much. Okay, quick time check. We have like 9 more minutes of this session. So maybe probably maybe 2 more people. Any other? Okay, I think Esperanza was first. Oh, I can't, okay.
So I think one thing, first of all, thank you. Jackson County, Drew Markle from Jackson County, Indiana. I'm the president of the Jackson County Commissioners. I think one of the main things, and Secretary talked about this, we have to break the wall between entrepreneurship and economic development. So all of us, I'm an entrepreneur, I own multiple businesses. I see on the TV and in the pictures the big ribbon cutting with all the fancy people, and I'm over here grinding it out. And none of the small businesses, none of the local businesses are on that big screen. So our county government sits in a town with 2 stoplights. We have over 900 miles of gig fiber in Jackson County. If you're in a trailer in the hills or you're in the main city, you have full gig fiber. You can hook onto fiber anywhere in the county. So it's 2025. We can do businesses anywhere. We can put a data farm in the hills of Jackson County. We can put a brand new farm in the hills of Jackson County. So we have access to everything there for an entrepreneur, for a small business. I think one of the things that we did, the government, the federal government and all their blessings bestowed upon us millions of dollars in ARPA funds. So what do you do with it? So as a county government, we took $1 million of county money and gave it to Spark. And Spark is a co-working space for entrepreneurs. It's going to be it's a brand new building, a brand new system, a brand new group that's going to be opening up. This is fully for entrepreneurs. Another big thing in Jackson County is ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition. This has to be done. If we do not do this in these states, these businesses will die and they will be gone. They are making billions of dollars. And this is one of Dan is our chamber director that's here with us. ETA has got to be a focus. New businesses are great, but there are so many families out there that have great revenue, great numbers. And as they trail off, these numbers trail off with them. They get tired. They lose focus. I love businesses. Everyone in this room loves businesses. If you tell me that there's a heating and ventilation company that has a net revenue of $500,000 a year, why would we not meet with those people? First, shore up their business. Make it acquirable. Make sure their books are correct. Make sure they understand that their books need to be correct to be acquired. And then find the capital. So if I'm a small business owner, an M&A costs $30,000 to $50,000 to $100,000. So if I'm a local business owner, do I have $100,000 in cash to go through an M&A process? I most likely don't. But that's where the government can help. That's where government money can actually help. Can I get that money to go through an M&A process to achieve access to the company? And then we talk about funding. Can you help me go to the bank and get an operating line? And what does that even look like? Because I know Governor Braun stated it perfectly. You only need an operating line when you can't get it. You're too far gone then. So how do we get this? So, that is the entrepreneurial support in Jackson County that we are trying to build. And it is awesome to hear the state level is going to do this. So the ETA, and then in Jackson County, we started a Spark Capital group. So it is for ETA. So it's finding those businesses in our community with Indiana state dollars, so local investors. So ETA and like a capital, and outside of P&E, private equity, you're going to lose 3 to 6% of the jobs. If you work through ETA, you're going to gain 5% more jobs. So just trying to focus on true entrepreneurial grit. We love tech, we love startups, we love all the shiny and fancy things, but give me 5 HVAC companies or plumbing companies right now. I'll take them. If you have them for sale, I will buy them. Funeral homes, I will buy them. So just, again, trying to keep that nose to the grindstone support to those that are out there hunting and looking. And I'm talking individuals, not P&E, not large equity groups, locals. Because I don't want to see them leave. I'll use a name. I love the big, giant HVAC companies that suck up all these little mom and pops. But why can I not keep them in our community?
Great.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And actually, something we talk a lot about at Right to Start is the notion of entrepreneurial spirit and promise. So it's not necessarily creating the job, it's creating the environment that inspires people to create jobs and then keep their companies there. Esperanza, do you want to take us home?
Yes, and I want to expand on the accelerator program that we have in Arkansas. So that $2 million investment, it's per year. This year we have funded 11 accelerators, all from a variety of sectors that include agriculture, technology, AI, healthcare, a global cycling accelerator. So a lot of really interesting industries. And we have also been working with the Walton Family Foundation. They're matching the grant, so that really expands the outreach for these accelerator programs. Another program that we're very excited about is our Arise program, which is our program to support technology companies, commercialize technology. This one is a $7 million investment over 7 years. So the state is really putting a lot of investment into these programs and not just supporting it by mouth. But this program is meant to equip entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, with coaching, subject matter experts, access to capital, et cetera, in the entire state. The focus is we have to make sure that we find a way to reach the rural parts of the state. Coupled with that is one that I am very excited about, and we call it the 75 Strong program. It stands for the 75 counties in the state of Arkansas. We are building capacity, training economic development leaders and chamber executives that applied for this program. We have about 50 to 60 participants, and they're being trained through the International Economic Development Council to acquire the certification on entrepreneurial development. It's a 2-year program, and so the goal is within these 2 years, we're going to build capacity. We're going to deploy all these economic developer leaders into their community so they can strategize and really from the ground up support entrepreneurship and small business. And the state is paying for all these certifications and the training, which I think is terrific for us. And then a new one that we will be starting, it's a VC program. So currently, the state of Arkansas, through the Northwest Arkansas Council, is bringing venture capitalists into the state. But we're partnering with the organization so we can deploy that into the entire state. So this last May, they brought about 35 VCs that have the opportunity to have like a matchmaking type setup. So they can meet with entrepreneurs. And the idea is to develop this strategy where we have this flow of, we develop companies through the accelerators that can be later walked into Arise and then moved down the road through this VC program. And in addition to that, we have that 75-strong program that is working on a regional level, state level, among several other initiatives. But it's a lot of investment, and I am very thankful for Right to Start to invite me here. Thankful for Indiana and for this organization, because from a state standpoint, it's so refreshing to know that there are other counterparts and learning what they're doing. Thank you.
No, we talk about this too at Right to Start, which is this field is so new. Like we're all kind of learning from each other and building it together, and so why not, share peer learnings? Okay, so we're going to now shift into a discussion with my colleagues. Jason Grill is the Chief Government Affairs Officer for Right to Start, and Victor is the founder and CEO. And then after that, we'll move into our next moderated discussion. I also just want to give another thanks to Secretary Adams for joining us today.
Well, and thank you all, and really appreciate this conversation. This is exactly what we need to be doing at the state, the regional level. And I'm now going to depart your good company so I can go join Governor Braun in signing the bill to enact everything we're talking about here. So thank you all.
Thank you.
We have a presentation.
We have a presentation. If we can load that up.
So we wanted to provide a presentation, a bit of context and data and information around entrepreneurship at the state and local level. And so this reflects a lot of the work that we've been doing over the years in entrepreneurship. So setting the stage, why entrepreneurship and policy around it matters. So hello, this is us. Myself, Kim already introduced me, but I used to be at the Kauffman Foundation where I led the entrepreneurship work, and I'm an entrepreneur myself. For 25 years now, I've sort of done almost everything from being an entrepreneur to investing in companies, to selling companies, to leading entrepreneurial support organizations, to doing entrepreneurial development, to being in entrepreneurial philanthropy. So I've seen lots of different components of this work.
Yeah, and I'm a former state legislator, recovering politician. Jason Grill, Chief Operating Officer, or Chief Government Affairs Officer. Sorry, Kim, done that twice this week. We love everyone in this room, and I'm very happy to see so many friends, and I can't wait for our session here coming up next on policy. But I'm an entrepreneur as well. I've started a manufacturing product company at one point. I have a consulting company. Obviously, lead our government affairs at Right to Start. I've always cared deeply about this issue because when I was in government, no one ever talked to me about it, and ended up working with Kauffman Foundation for a while as a consultant because I believe that we needed to connect the people in this room to entrepreneurs and to elected officials. And the more you can put them together, the more good policy and the more good things that will happen. So it's been a passion of mine for quite a while. So I'm very excited to be pretty much along for the ride since day one with Right to Start.
And this work is lonelier than it should be, and that's why we're here together. And so the way we've really tried to tackle our work at Right to Start is to think about how do we unify the field? How do we bring together the people that care about entrepreneurs? So our strategic pillars is that we lift the voices of entrepreneurs up from the grassroots up to the grass tops. And so we're connecting the the needs of the entrepreneur on the ground with the capabilities and the resources of leaders such as yourself. We do that through changing policies, advocating with entrepreneurs, with policymakers and civic leaders at all levels, changing communities, mobilizing citizens to take actions that expand entrepreneurial opportunity. This is building constituency of people who care about entrepreneurship. And that's always been an issue because entrepreneurs themselves are too busy. They have no time and no resources to get involved. And so somehow we've got to be able to build that constituency. And 3, change minds, elevating the importance of entrepreneurial opportunity through storytelling and media. A lot of these stories of entrepreneurs don't get heard. We've heard from stories such as Governor Braun and others. Almost every entrepreneur you talk to, from all the stores surrounding here, the convention center, to the businesses in your communities, every entrepreneurial story is a heroic journey. And you can scratch this a little bit, and someone there sacrificed so much of their careers and their lives. They put their financial futures on the line to build what they built, and there's so much there. So we have to tell these stories and lift them up. Here is the footprint of our organization. So we're only 5 years old, and you can see how quickly we've been able to grow across the country. We've got
77. That's supposed to be
77 pieces of legislation introduced. So spreading coast to coast, we're a footprint in 34 states. Yeah, 77 Right to Start ambassadors, advocates, board members, team members, et cetera, across the country. And so that's been a very rapid growth for us. And then we got 50 states where we've actually done work. So we've been able to touch all 50 states at this point with some kind of activity, which has led to at least 22 states introducing over 67 pieces of legislation based on our ideas, and 7 states having implemented our ideas statewide.
Yeah, we've really made an effort to try to be everywhere as a company or a nonprofit that's 5 years old. So it's so fun to go meet people from all across the country and learn from them. And it's really cool to see what's happening in Indiana here this week.
It is this perspective which really kind of helps us inform why we need to be able to support convening such of these, because the work happening coast to coast, we see all the individual pockets, and then we learn that we kind of end up being the person connecting all these different dots together. And so there really is a need to bring together the peer network of people that are leading and championing this work. So the why. Why are we here? We wanted to share some important data that will be really useful, and my colleague Kim Lane alluded to some of this already. But this is data that was originally from the National Bureau of Economic Research about the importance of entrepreneurship. And some of you may know this chart, but this is really important because that blue line at the top are businesses that are less than 5 years, and the red line is middle-aged businesses, like 5 to 9 years. And the gray line are businesses that are 10 years or older. These are more established businesses. And you can see for 2 decades, entrepreneurs, the young businesses, are the only source of constant net job creation in the economy. That is, older businesses over time will shed jobs. Particularly the bigger, older businesses will shed a lot of jobs during the hard times, during the recessions. And interestingly enough, they don't rehire the folks that they let go. So you need to have new businesses that are constantly creating that dynamism that brings the new job creation. But in our bipartisan poll that we conducted across the country, only 18% of voters knew this. Voters generally believe that jobs come from big companies and older companies. They don't understand that the entrepreneurs are the source of where the jobs come from. And so this is incumbent on us as a community to get that message out. We have to build a public campaign to really let people know that, and we have to build leadership network that actually is able to communicate that. So new companies equal new jobs. It's a really simple equation. We kind of
Please
use
remember
this.
that and share it with your colleagues.
Yeah, we need to make T-shirts and hats with that. And it's more than just new job creation. There's actually data that shows that GDP is the source, entrepreneurs are the source of GDP growth. So you can actually track when GDP grows, and entrepreneurial growth is a leading indicator of when GDP goes up. It increases lifetime incomes. Entrepreneurs that make 10% over their lifetimes on average than non-entrepreneurs. It's a bit tough in the beginning, and so the early years don't always count, but over the lifetime, entrepreneurs tend to do better. They increase community wealth, so every 1% increase in entrepreneurship at the county level correlates to almost $500 increase in household income across the entire county. So it's not just the entrepreneurs that benefit, there's a ripple effect county-wide. So there's a regional effect, just like Secretary Adams was saying, that entrepreneurs benefit lots of people around them. Well, it also diversifies goods and services. We saw some of this issue during COVID when we lost the ability to import, and so we lost a lot of goods and services that we needed, and it was the entrepreneurs that were front and center in adapting our country to the new situation. They fight inequality and poverty. So really important data point, for every 1% increase in entrepreneurship in a state, there's a 2% correlating decrease in the poverty rate in a state. So entrepreneurship is a poverty fighting mechanism, which is something that the public doesn't know and we need to let them know. And it creates homegrown jobs. These jobs are jobs that are in communities, especially in communities that have been left behind. We see this issue in parts of cities and rural areas and small towns where jobs have departed, and entrepreneurship becomes the real key to building those homegrown jobs. The issues. So this was a poll conducted by the Kauffman Foundation when I was there that looked at what entrepreneurs think about the role of government. 81% of entrepreneurs say government favors big businesses over them. So there is a deep sense of, I guess, a sense that the system is kind of tilted against them, that the way that government responds tends to favor the larger, more established firms. 69% of entrepreneurs say government doesn't care about them at all. And so this goes to the point that entrepreneurs don't have a voice in the system. They're too busy, they have no resources, and they're not organized because there's new entrepreneurs coming in every day. So there really isn't a simple way to organize around the needs of entrepreneurs. And then, and this is actually a SBA a poll. 41% of Americans would start their dream business in 6 months if they could. And the reality, though, if you look at the statistics, is that only 2% of them do. So there's this huge opportunity gap between the entrepreneurial aspirations of Americans and what they're actually able to pull off. This is more data from our poll, which is what do Americans think about the challenges of starting and growing a business. So we found that this is one of these near unanimous issues as well. 92% of Americans say that it's difficult or very difficult to start a business today. Of course, it's always somewhat difficult, I think, to start a business, but the fact that half of them said very difficult means that we probably make it much harder than it needs to be. And you can see just how transpartisan this issue is across Republicans, independents, and Democrats. People really feel like the odds are stacked against them when they build a business. And then same poll, this is, if you look at why people didn't start a business, we asked them a bunch of questions about what held them back. And you can see that half of the people who considered starting a business but did not said it was a whole host of factors. From insufficient capital to they couldn't afford government fees. Half of them said they had confusing government requirements or forms. Half said they were afraid of losing health care. A third couldn't get the right training or information. A third said the government services were poor. 30% said the approvals were too slow, and 15% said they were held back by non-competes. And what this points to is that this is the challenge of entrepreneurship, is that it's not a silver bullet issue. You can't just create one program. You can't just say we've got one tax break or one incentive or one fund that's going to solve everything. Entrepreneurship is a 360-degree problem, and the polling data bears that out, which is if you really want to help entrepreneurs, you have to look at it as a very broad-based effort around services, education, support structure. The superstructure, as the governor called it, really around entrepreneurship is critical. But that makes it hard on us because we have to think very broadly about all the things that might get in the way.
Can I just stop you there, Victor, and we talk about maybe quickly on the government fees? I know a lot of states have a low fee. Some states have a yearly fee for an LLC, but all of these fees kind of add up. And compared to other countries, we're very high, which is interesting to know because we are at GEC. Can you just talk about that and what other countries are doing potentially?
Sure. The World Bank, the last time they did a survey about it, they found that the U.S. on average charges close to $800 in terms of fees and costs to start a business. And if you contrast that with other countries, a lot of countries that we think of as potentially more bureaucratic than the U.S. are actually free or $100 or $200, from China to Sweden to Canada to Brazil. to lots of other countries. And so this is the World Bank Doing Business survey. You can find that the U.S. actually is quite expensive. We make it hard on ourselves. These are self-inflicted wounds. And these are things that we could potentially make a real difference in, and state and local fees. I've run into a lot of entrepreneurs who said the local fees were killing them, and sometimes if they start a business in December and the fee's not prorated, they're paying several $100s, to start in December or November. When they have to do it again in January. So there's all kinds of issues where, for a lot of people, a few $100, $800 is a killer in getting their business started.
And we'll talk about that a little bit in the policy arena here in a second.
And so these are self-inflicted wounds. So we can change this, and we need to break these barriers for new and small businesses. This also politically has the power to unite people across party lines. We asked this question. It's a bit provocative of a question, which is, would you be more likely? What would you think about supporting a candidate who emphasized making it easier to start and grow a new business? And we particularly didn't say, supported entrepreneurs. We wanted to put it in plain English. And you can see that 62% of voters said that they'd be more likely to support a candidate who talked about entrepreneurship. So this is a bit of a sleeper issue. And it's an issue that actually, though, resonates strongly with swing voters and is persuasive. You can see 64% of independent voters said this would matter to them in terms of electing a candidate. So this has surprisingly not historically been an issue that candidates have talked much about. But what's been exciting is seeing in the last election cycle that this issue started to come out more. And I think there's even more room to run where this becomes something that a lot of people can talk about, because it is something that we find voters do care about.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about changing policies, because a lot of people in this room have done so. And we've had a lot of really great things to celebrate since Right to Start started in 2020. And Nevada was the first state to kind of enact a Right to Start policy recommendation into law, where they created their Office of Entrepreneurship inside the Governor's Office of Economic Development. In 2024, Missouri followed suit, and Missouri actually, Senator Travis Fitzwater, who's in that picture with me, they're still in the special session right now, so he couldn't be here. He actually, Victor and I met with him and just went through, our 20 different ideas, and he ended up crafting kind of a great piece of legislation. Over the years, it was changed, it was whittled down, it was increased, but it got to the point where it became a very bipartisan bill, and so they also created the Office of Entrepreneurship, which he actually was the person who came up with tracking of government contracts for new businesses under 5 years old, because they weren't doing it. And so now the state is required to share with the legislature kind of what new businesses are working with the state and getting contracts, what percentages those are, how small, how big. So he's the genius behind that. This piece of legislation was also approved by the Council of State Governments as shared state legislation. It's been model policy with other organizations, but we've had a lot of success because we firmly believe that there should be someone, at least one person in charge of entrepreneurship for the state. We need to elevate this issue inside of state government, and it's obviously been happening here in Indiana. Other states followed suit, such as Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, and we'll hear from some of these folks here today, and Michigan, where whether there was a bill going through the legislature and the legislative process, the governor took action before that bill was signed into law, or it was done through a budgetary measure. Those states have created kind of the director of entrepreneurship. And you can see on this slide kind of what we believe and we would hope that they would do, which is, kind of coordinate policies affecting entrepreneurs, try to cut red tape, try to streamline government processes, expand access to government contracts for new and young companies. We believe firmly, and as the governor said, tracking data on entrepreneurship growth is very important to this. And also issuing an annual State of Entrepreneurship report, we believe, is very important because it gives the opportunity for the legislature and the state to hear about the success stories of what they're doing in entrepreneurship, but also kind of lets you actually take a look at what you're not doing that great and hopefully improve on it, which will lead to more policy in the future that the legislature can enact. So we've really had a really pretty good success with the Office of Entrepreneurship and just having someone in that key role. It's something that most legislators and policymakers understand. And we also know that new businesses have different issues than small businesses who could be old. So very exciting to see. And obviously in Indiana, the bill has now become laws too. So another state doing great work around entrepreneurship. We do a lot of media and, the policy media doesn't get much respect, as everyone knows. Governing Magazine, people probably have heard of it in this room, but maybe the folks outside of this room haven't. But we write op-eds, and they did one I wrote on why your state needs an Office of Entrepreneurship. That I'd love to share that with everyone here in this room afterwards. And if you ever want to create one or grow yours, you have. It's kind of gives you the tools and the bullet points you'll need to kind of move that forward. And then Inc. Magazine did a story about the different things happening across the country with these offices of entrepreneurship. So very good to see, get us some coverage in the media here. I want to update too, and we have all kinds of different policy recommendations besides just the Office of Entrepreneurship, but in the state of Texas just last week, they had a bill that was passed in the Senate and the House, and again, almost unanimously in the Senate and unanimously in the House, that's now been sent to the governor. And this bill started off with a huge deal to cut all fees for first-year businesses when they are registering. It also did a lot with tracking of government contracts, workforce development spending, economic development spending, and how much the state was doing with new and young businesses. Ended up, at the end of the day, changing a little bit, but now it includes expedited services for someone who wants to start a business. They do that in Nevada and Delaware, I believe, with filing to grade it quicker and give you earlier access, as well as cutting the franchise tax and making it permanent for veteran-owned businesses under 5 years old to pay no taxes, franchise taxes in their first 5 years. So very big success. It was a bipartisan bill. So hopefully that will be signed by the governor here soon. But just pointing that out to mention that at Right to Start, we have a host of different policy recommendations on our website at righttostart.org and in our field guide. Cities are also leading the way. We have a lot of cities here and our friends from Institute for Justice and NLC. I wanted to point out too that Right to Start is not just state. We are city. We care about cities. We care about state, and we've even done some work on the national level with the House Entrepreneurship Caucus in D.C. But these are some cities that are doing great work. Miami has the eStart Digital Services Program, and these two are on our field guide on our website. Kansas City created a one-stop shop called KC BizCare, which actually is in the office of the mayor and City Hall, and so very cool. When an entrepreneur walks into City Hall, they immediately see a sign that says KC BizCare, and they kind of help them navigate everything they need to do in the city. Atlanta has the ATL and Business Program. Detroit, Justin couldn't make it, but he is now the new Director of Entrepreneurship and Economic Opportunity for the city of Detroit. So we're seeing a entrepreneurship director now on the city level take more of a main stage in the high level of the mayor's office. And then I think last week, Los Angeles just launched the Business Navigator program, which Victor maybe can tell us more about here in the future. But all of these cities are doing great work leading the way on these issues with policy. And I want Victor to kind of chime in too on this. But at Right to Start, we launched there was really no therapy group for all these folks doing all of the work. There was no peer group. There was no place where they could share best practices, expertise, lessons learned. And so we created the NELM group with our co-chairs, Ben and Taylor, Ben from Michigan and Taylor from Kansas, to kind of have this forum where all these folks doing this work can connect and can talk. And so we have monthly sessions to help strengthen a lot of the things I've talked about in policy implementation. We had our annual convening on Tuesday. We had a breakfast with this national network. We're doing ongoing mentoring and supporting throughout the year with them. And we have a digital community where they can share and discuss things. So this just happened in 2025. And we're hoping to do it on the city level, especially, and on the county level here in the future, because we've seen the impact, and we really believe these people and everyone in this room needs to connect and share best practices.
All I'll add is that even public sector leaders in entrepreneurship need therapy, and so this becomes a great place for that.
They're truly pioneering, and this is all new to everyone, so it's exciting. And I mentioned our field guide for policymakers. We have a federal field guide, a state field guide, and a local field guide, which gives specific ideas and research around how to support entrepreneurs, create jobs, and grow economies. And that continues to evolve as we learn from you and learn from other states and cities about what has been effective. We like to provide links and resource guides on there, and it will continue to evolve throughout the livelihood of Right to Start. And then, Victor, you might want to chime in here too, but part of that national poll was see all those issues on that screen, and we have the poll on our website too, which we have a 10-page brief that you can download. But all of these issues on this screen are truly bipartisan supported. I mean, you're seeing 80%, 90%, 75%. I mean, I think the lowest on any of our ideas was in the 60s. So we truly haven't seen many bipartisan issues like this in quite some time that truly bring along everything and all these different types of issues. And so these are kind of some of the things that we care about at Right to Start. And there's more information on our website, but we really hope that at some point we can continue to tackle all of these things as it relates to pro-entrepreneurship policies. So we are having an impact. That's kind of a photo catalog of us and some of our team members from New York to Arkansas, Nevada, and Missouri, Colorado, Maryland, and then in Nevada with the bill signing there. So we're only having this impact because of the people in this room and the people around the country and the people that get it, but we got to expand the base. And so that's why we're doing a lot of things for 2026 with America's Birthday to try to bring on, not only the people in this room that get it, but also your colleagues, but also everyday Americans who should care more about entrepreneurship because of all the great things it does for a community and a state.
And thank you very much. And that, I think, as you saw in that prior photo, there's a lot of photos of us in front of state capitals. So a lot of people take photos in front of baseball stadiums and other things, and we're the types of nerds that take pictures of and collect photos of state capitals, including this one next door to us. But it really goes to the point that if you're in a community that is looking to have our help, we're looking to help. And so we are out there. We're on the ground in the country, in the communities. We do road trips. Our team is virtual, and every quarter we have a team retreat in a different place in the country. And so if you're interested in having us come do our team retreat out there in your community, and we can come visit your state capitol, we'd love to take a photo of that too.
And I know we ramped a lot of stuff into this 3 hours, but obviously, if anyone needs to take a break, go to the bathroom, get a drink, please feel free to do that. But I like to continue on into the next session because I know a lot of these folks in this room have a lot to talk about when it comes to entrepreneurship policy, if that's cool. And so we'll start our moderated discussion here on entrepreneurship policy. And let's see, who should I start with here? Maybe Rep. Teshka, since you're in Indiana and you were the one that was kind of the champion of the Office of Entrepreneurship bill and also many other components of it for years. It included the regulatory sandbox and other issues. Talk to us about kind of the journey to get to this point, this historic point in Indiana, and what you learned and whatnot, because you've been working on this for 2 to 3 years, so it took a lot of effort, and very happy to have you here and be in Indiana.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. I too one day aspire to be a recovering politician. So
I do. I see your other businesses doing well, so hopefully that'll happen.
That's right. That's right. So I showed up to the State House with a particular interest in entrepreneurship. I come from a pretty entrepreneurial part of the state, the north central Indiana region. We've got a lot of great stuff going on in Elkhart and St. Joe County, University of Notre Dame with the Idea Center, and Elkhart County with some other entrepreneurship and education programs, and was quickly, kind of introduced to this idea that while Indiana is consistently ranked as number one or maybe number two by different organizations as top states to do business or to start a new business in, that we lag in actual new business starts. And as the governor mentioned, maybe there's a different way that we can quantify that, and maybe we're not necessarily getting the metric right, but at the end of the day, I think the story is that while we rank near the top or at the top to start a new business, that's not necessarily translating into new business starts. And so the question is, why is that? And I think that we have had many discussions around that. Of course, Victor and Right to Start have been important in those discussions. As you mentioned, we've championed a couple of bills. One that would kind of combine some of the Right to Start initiatives, like the 5 to Start and some others, with the regulatory sandbox program, which, if you're not familiar, would essentially allow startup businesses to operate in this metaphorical sandbox, under the watchful eye of regulators, but free from some of those regulations. And I think that's a two-way thing. That's helpful to the entrepreneurs themselves, but it's also helpful to state government to kind of see ways where it's being heavy-handed or maybe outdated in its regulation. And what we know is that government does not operate at the speed of business. And so I think it could be helpful in that way. Those efforts have come up short. I think that ultimately, what we really needed was this Office of Entrepreneurship as a place to house programs like that for a renewed focus on entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial activity in the state. And as a small government guy, it's always been somewhat interesting to me to come in to this conversation and say, okay, well, what is the role of the government to help entrepreneurs? And I think there's a couple of things. I think Secretary Adams mentioned one right up at the top, and that's a cultural thing, right? How do we celebrate our state's wins and make sure that that next generation of entrepreneurs know that Indiana is a great place to start that business and to make it happen right here. What we know is that most VC, if you look at the numbers, happens in New York, California, and maybe Massachusetts because of Boston, right? And so I think there's certainly this inherent idea among young people and folks like, hey, if I got a great idea, I'm gonna have to move to one of the coasts to get it done. And I think what we want to say is, no, we can do that right here. We can do it really well, and you'll be supported. And so I think we do that by listening actively to our entrepreneurs and amplifying their stories. I was just in Upland, Indiana last week, visiting the Near Space Education folks. They're doing amazing work there in a small town. They've got a small university that's kind of helping to support some of that stuff. But there are a lot of stories that I would not know if I were not an elected official. And so the question is, how do we amplify that and get that message out? And then there's the question about how do we give opportunities. So we talk about some of the right to start policy recommendations, and I'm going to be happy to continue to pursue those as I continue in my role here in the state of Indiana. And then I think something that Commissioner Markle mentioned, I think is really interesting to me is, how do we look at entrepreneurship? Is it just as this, single person or this entity that's starting a new business, or is it entrepreneurial activity like entrepreneurship through acquisition? And to take that even further, I had a bill this year that was aimed at helping ESOP, so employee stock ownership plans to get off the ground. A lot of times capital, the funding of that program right up front is kind of an issue. And so this was a linked deposit program looking to help employees take over their businesses. And this really gets at that, like we have this issue of, maybe it's first, but second, definitely third generation businesses where, now the kids don't want to have anything to do with the business. Maybe they've moved off to another state. And how do we keep those jobs in our smaller communities, right? And it might be a small mom and pop shop that's got currently 25 employees, but in a town of, a couple of thousand folks, that's a big deal. And so I think certainly this entrepreneurship through acquisition is something that we want to continue to pursue. And again, whether that's through something like an ESOP or something like encouraging somebody that's already local to purchase and continue and grow that business. Because as has been noted, and I would just be remiss if I didn't echo what Kim has said and many others have said, is that a majority of new jobs start because of small and new businesses. And so we need to do everything we can to help support them.
Right. I remember through your process too, people said, what happens after 5 years? Do we still support these folks through this Office of Entrepreneur? I mean, there's always a question that gets asked at these hearings that you didn't think of, but they're usually you've heard most of them. But you did such a great job, and congrats on all of the success and the unanimous votes. I mean, that is so rare in government, as you know. It's very exciting to see. So thank you so much for all your work. And David, do you want to chime in at all on Indiana anymore before I move on to the rest of the country?
Well, while we have an opportunity to hog the mic, we'll take it. No, I mean, just the leadership of the governor and Representative Teshka, Secretary Adams. I mean, you see that we think about entrepreneurship quite a bit. It shouldn't come as a surprise, but this is not the first time that we've had some of these discussions, whether it be about the regulatory sandbox. I thought the ESOP bill was amazing, actually. I thought it was a really good one. So, I mean, we think pretty long and hard about entrepreneurship in Indiana. We have been doing that for a while as we try to make sure that there's this opportunity set, I think, that's been presented to all of us here at various levels of state leadership, where I am in economic development, where the representative is in the legislature, where our mayors and commissioners and these amazing pockets of entrepreneurship that are popping up in all parts of the state, not just in cities, in towns, in small villages. The storyline is that we think we can drive greater economic growth and prosperity for the citizens of Indiana by investing in entrepreneurship and small business in the way that economic development has traditionally invested in big and large business. And we think that it's going to be better for everybody. It won't be a race to the bottom. We think that it'll be a boon for commerce and GDP growth and everything in between. So welcome, all the ideas. I think I'm at 3 or 4 pages of notes already. So look forward to continuing to hear from you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll have many more. I want to turn to former State Senator Steve Kaiser from Arizona. We'll go out west. You were a champion on entrepreneurship policy in a state where it is very divided, right? I mean, you have the moderate Republicans, the moderate Democrats, the conservative. I mean, it's very tight, like 1 or 2 votes. Tell us about your journey, and you also are an entrepreneur, and why you decided to kind of try to do some things there, because it did pass in one body and then it got changed in the other. There's so many different steps, as everyone knows, but what were your learnings? What was your best practices? Why were you motivated? What could you see moving forward to be successful in Arizona? Because I know you all are a growing state and have great stuff happening there.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and thank you, Indiana, for hosting us. This is an amazing convening. Former small business owner, and I had 15 employees, and I was always coaching them. I had a small junk removal business, so it's nothing sexy, nothing tech. We picked up trash and took it to the dump and recycled it. And I always was frustrated that non-tech businesses never got any attention, never got any love. And I would train my guys, because I noticed, been involved in higher ed and corporate America, and I noticed that a lot of young men just never really accelerate. They don't go to college as often. They don't start businesses. And I was actually training all my guys to start competitive junk removal businesses because I believed in small business ownership so much. And so I kind of took that to the legislature. I ran because I wanted to make Arizonans more prosperous. And so reducing cost of living, starting businesses, things like that, because I recognized starting businesses was the pathway to wealth in this country. And so I was very excited to run and work with Jason on this bill. Our state was never going to be a state that would open an office of. We were very reticent to, they would consider that growing government. And so our state actually got rid of the Department of Commerce years ago and created the Arizona Commerce Authority, which is kind of a public-private entity. And they do a lot with entrepreneurship, but there's not a strong connection to the legislature with what they do. And so what we tried to run was a reduction in fees and income taxes for startups and things like that. But what we found also was, as we're talking to members, there was a lot of confusion about what is a small business, what's an entrepreneurial business, what are the time hacks, why are we giving these people a tax break but not these people a tax break? We ran into that issue a lot too as we were moving the bill. Ultimately not successful. We made it through the Senate, made it through committee in the House, and then didn't pass the House floor. But that was just a couple years ago. Now I'm a dirty, nasty lobbyist with my own business, so maybe I can run that bill again just on my own as a lobbyist, because I know there's a lot of support for this kind of thinking. So,
but you mentioned a good point there about kind of the added government. And, obviously we'll get into budgets and stuff right now. I mean, there's cuts everywhere. But we believe that you didn't create all the bureaucracy and all the forms and all the licensing and all the fees and all the, permitting and all that. You're just the one person there, the couple people there, the few people that can help. I mean, their job is to kind of streamline all of that and help entrepreneurs. So that's kind of something I think that has evolved throughout this process of, if all these big businesses and whatnot have people in economic development fighting for them, why shouldn't the new young companies and the entrepreneurs? So, and they're the one, and that kind of appeals, I think, more to those folks who, don't want to create more government. It's like, well, this person's actually going to streamline government, which is interesting.
And one thing that happened this year, so lobbyists get paid to run bills, but they also get paid to kill bills. And I was approached to kill a bill that really resonated with me as a former small business owner. It was a bill that would have allowed big businesses to squash smaller businesses. And I felt very compelled to kill that bill. And there was a lot of friendly fire in that fight where you had, I would go to small chambers of commerce and say, this bill is going to hurt small businesses. You should oppose this, and here's why. And they would take it back to their board and then come back to me and say, sorry, we're going to be on the other side of this one. And I said, how could you be on the other side of this one? Well, you look closer, even small chambers have big businesses on their boards. And then when you look at who is on the big chambers of your state, there's a public policy committee. And how do you get on the public policy committee? You have to write a big check to be on that public policy committee. So guess who is writing that big check? It's not an entrepreneur. And luckily, we were able to get a coalition of folks together to severely water down that bill so it's not going to hurt small businesses. But alarm bells are going off in my head. Like, if small chambers aren't, even our small business association has big businesses as part of it. There is no one representing entrepreneurs. And so it makes me think they need to have a voice at the legislature. And then also, so often lawmakers, this was said earlier by the governor, at the legislature, at least in Arizona, there's very few small business owners in the legislature. Very few people sign the front of the check, like he said. Very few people understand P&Ls. We have a lot more activists becoming legislators. And I think, so if you do own a business, I would encourage your employees to run for office to help them maintain their employment and serve in the legislature. Because we need that business voice at the legislature. Otherwise, it's going to evaporate into activism only.
Mm-hmm. Well said. I want to move to New Mexico. Nora, who has a new role there. New Mexico actually had a bill. It passed both houses on the Office of Entrepreneurship. The governor then did it and created an Office of Entrepreneurship there. But now they're kind of in that second layer where they're taking it to the next level. And I want you to talk about that because, we hear in the media and obviously in this room, we're dealing with a lot of budget cuts and whatnot. But you all have decided to double down on innovation and technology and entrepreneurship this last session. So tell us who you are and what you're doing in New Mexico.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So my name is Nora Meyer-Sackett. I'm the currently the director of the Office of Strategy, Science, and Technology in New Mexico, soon to be the director of the Technology and Innovation Office, which is kind of what Jason is referring to. So I do want to just thank Right to Start for having me. They've been really integral in sort of growing Office of Entrepreneurship in New Mexico and continuing to inform the work we're doing. So just want to thank you very much for that. So as Jason mentioned, a lot of folks are looking at cuts. New Mexico is in a very happy position currently to have had budget surpluses the past few years, largely due to oil and gas. New Mexico is the number 2 oil-producing state in the country behind Texas. And we are lucky really to have partners, champions really in the legislature who want to take that funding and reinvest it in ways that allow us to continue our economic diversification work. Our state revenues are largely dependent on oil and gas, and so that can obviously be a boom and bust industry, and so there's a lot of diversification work to be done. And so that really kind of began for technology and innovation last year with the creation of the Office of Entrepreneurship and some funding for us to really do some strategic planning, hire an entrepreneurship coordinator. We tripled our team. Before you think that sounds really big, it was starting as a team of 1. And so we added folks focusing on entrepreneurship, growing our resources to provide to businesses in science and tech. For some context, if you don't know, New Mexico is home to 2 national laboratories, which is a unique asset that we have. And so we're really looking to capitalize on that unique asset, those core competencies that we have in deep tech and science and innovation in New Mexico. And this year, we are very lucky to have a technology and innovation office. New legislation passed in the legislature that establishes some new statutory frameworks for us to focus and expand our scope. And that is coming with a sort of record amount of new funding for us. There's a new research development and deployment fund. There's new funding for non-dilutive grants to our businesses in science and tech. And additional, we're really just looking to continue filling the gaps that we identify for entrepreneurs, a lot of funding for incubators, accelerators, venture studios. For example, one of the programs we have includes providing, it's non-dilutive funding that essentially provides a parachute for the folks taking that leap of faith, specifically to leave universities with tech that they have developed, but don't have that safety net to go out and commercialize it, turn that into a company. So providing that funding to sort of cushion that leap and to support them in launching a company and becoming entrepreneurs. I also wanted to mention a couple other things unique to New Mexico in terms of entrepreneurship. There's a lot of talk of reducing barriers, reducing obstacles. When we're talking about reducing red tape, we're talking about reducing obstacles. And there are several things I think that in New Mexico we've identified as obstacles that we are reducing that aren't typically thought about with entrepreneurship. So New Mexico is one of the first states to have free college for New Mexicans. So 2-year, 4-year trades, vocational certificates, any of those. At New Mexico, institutions of higher education is tuition free for New Mexicans. Don't have to be born in New Mexico. You could have moved here. Once you establish residency, you can go for free. That, is huge in the state looking to increase our quality of education and when we need additional workforce. There was talk earlier about growing that STEM workforce, so huge for that. But also, when you don't have a mountain of student debt looming over you, perhaps you are less reticent to take that leap to start a business of your own because capital obviously can be such a challenge. Another unique element that New Mexico is deploying is also childcare. We have almost free childcare for the majority of families, which is huge in a state that is one of the poorest in terms of median incomes. And just similar to access to higher education, when we're talking about reducing red tape, reducing barriers to being entrepreneurs, if you have a child under school age that you are caring for and you don't have childcare, you are going to be a lot less likely to have the time to start a business, to really jump into entrepreneurship. So for us, it is both an incredibly lucky time to have champions in the legislature that are investing in us and enabling us to create new strategies and new programming that allows us to invest in entrepreneurship and technology and innovation, but also how we are incorporating other state programs that maybe aren't typically thought of as being in the entrepreneurship realm, but how that also impacts kind of the larger picture of holistic entrepreneurship.
That's a good point, because when we talk about these issues, a lot of people think, oh, we already do that. Like, we go to these cities, we do that, we do this. But entrepreneurship is a 360 problem, and we're trying to address that right to start, because there's programs on local programs, there's resource programs, but what about the childcare? What about mobility? What about non-competes? What about taxes? What about having someone in government who's fighting for you? So I mean, there's so many things that go into this, and it's never talked about as a major issue. It's always talked about as like, oh, we have this little thing or that thing. It's like, it's 360. And we need to think of it like that, because until you think of it like that, we're not going to get the kind of change I think we need to really support entrepreneurs. But they have been a beacon this year. And so Nora and Representative Meredith Dixon from New Mexico are great assets for everyone in this room if they want to talk to her. She was just such a champion for entrepreneurship. So very excited to have you all here, and thank you for coming and doing what you do. Representative Gray, I want to bring you into the conversation just to kind of highlight us on, we met multiple years ago, and you have stuff going on in Alabama. You have Innovate Alabama. Tell us about that. I know you were on the advisory board at one point, maybe still are, but you're a leader in Alabama, and I want to bring the South into the conversation, So what are you up to in Alabama, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you, Jason. In 2020, the governor reached out to Dr. Condoleezza Rice in California. She's at Stanford. She's over the Hoover Institute. Mm-hmm. And the governor wanted to kind of foster technology, entrepreneurship, innovation in the South, right? Mm-hmm. When we looked at things like supplemental funding, we were losing to places like North Carolina. We didn't have any supplemental funding on the state level. And so the governor she called me and a few more lawmakers and private stakeholders and started something called Innovate Alabama Commission. That commission started in 2020, It lasted a year. You had stakeholders like Alabama Power. You had like the big wigs. You had the small businesses all come together. And Hoover Institute sent business fellows to Alabama to kind of go from Huntsville all the way down to Mobile to learn about Rocket City, Birmingham, civil rights in Montgomery, agriculture, our beaches, and they found a jewel that we wasn't really presenting to the world. And so that came with a 100-page report. And through that 100-page report, we focused on things like K through 12, post-secondary, infrastructure, access to capital, making sure that, places like Birmingham and Huntsville, they had the silos of technology. When it came to more rural areas or East Alabama areas, they didn't have that. They didn't have that same opportunity. And so this commission, through this commission, there was 2 bills that were brought. One by myself and one by my Republican colleague. And one was to create an innovation corporation that consists of a public-private partnership where you would have about 11 board members, 5 coming from government, whether that be appointees from the Speaker of the House, the minority leaders, such and such, and then 6 will come from the private sector. And we then went on to hire an executive director, and so she fosters with her own staff what innovation and technology looks like in Alabama. We made sure to add things in like rural places in Alabama, HBCU. So we wanted it to encompass the whole state of Alabama. And so that was one piece of legislation. Another piece of legislation was centered around supplemental fundings, SBIR and STTR, when you're talking about research and development, R&D grants, to actually move businesses forward so they can have that seed money. And so we actually initially threw $5 million in the budget for that. Now it's around about 25 to 30 million. And so those 2 particular bills kind of started the lane for Innovate Alabama. And when we kind of think about just in its conception in 2021, and it really took off in 2022, we've basically been able to allot $125 million, 168 network partners. And we talked about the supplemental recipients. We have 68 that has totaled a total of $20 million. And we've also created about 1,000 jobs, right? And so I just think that we're right to start. We have the infrastructure to do something great. And now I'm trying to get them to plug in some of this, the policies and initiatives to right to start, because I think we already have the vehicle to get that started.
Yeah. They're doing amazing work, and the representative is incredible at what he does. And we've met through the years at many conferences, and it's just so great to have you here and be here. So thank you for all the work you're doing. And I have so many other people to get to. We have 10 minutes with my session. But I want to talk about cities now, Michael. Why don't we talk about Fort Worth? Because Victor and I spoke there with Cameron Cushman, 3 or 4 years ago, and you all were doing some incredible stuff in Fort Worth and Texas. Talk to us about kind of the city approach and what you've been doing on entrepreneurship, economic development, and innovation, because I feel like you all are leaders in the city space.
Thanks.
And you're an entrepreneur as well. I think a lot of people here have had a business or two.
Yeah, I would say I'm a failed entrepreneur too, which gives you a different perspective sometimes too to this.
Those are the stories actually that we need to hear more of at these events, because I think it does inform a lot of people that it does happen, and the other ones have been successful. So you're doing well.
No, I say that it does color me. Thanks for having me, Jason and Victor, and for putting all this together and everybody talking. We talk about the winners all the time, but we don't talk about the losers. And I think sometimes you learn as much through this process about that when you fail in this, sometimes being an entrepreneur. And I've actually carried that into my job as an elected official, understanding that what we can do to make it faster, more efficient, cheaper for businesses to get open more quickly. Those are jobs being created, those are tax dollars being generated, all of those pieces. So that has colored a little bit of what I've been able to do. And so something that's been said earlier, I don't think the government solves all your problems. I think that if you think about major issues or problems that we've had over the course of our history, entrepreneurs or trailblazers or other people are the people that have solved those problems. Sometimes problems we didn't even know we had, they've solved. And so I kind of take that approach when we're working with the government. And you're right, Cameron Cushman's been a great friend for a long period of time, came out of being trained out of the Kauffman Foundation of Entrepreneurship, and he made the introduction to Jennifer McDonald. I'm glad you're here today too, with Institute for Justice and the Cities Work program. Y'all have done a program of about 20 cities, and we approached you to look at what we're doing in Fort Worth, Texas, and how we can do it better. And we're like the 21st city that y'all studied. If y'all haven't looked at that report, it's a great report to just look at, takes ideas of small businesses, examples, and works them through a system with cities and tells you, what your pitfalls might be, whether it's fees, whether it's just red tape. And she's got a great example of Washington, D.C. when they started, and it was, a very long, to open a small business there, a very long, arduous process, and they were able to collapse some of those processes, and we were too in Fort Worth. So that was great, looking at our benchmarks, where we go. And if you don't understand where you are, you don't know where to go. But we were able to, starting off with a 1-star, whatever you want to call it, to a 5-star process. I think we're about 4.75. We're not quite at the 5, but it gives you benchmarks for where to go, and it's been helpful to us from there. And then that also led from that thing to work with National League of Cities with Corey and what they're doing as part of that process. A big part of this, we've all gone through this in our big cities, of looking at how you help small business entrepreneurs across the board in really underserved, underrepresented neighborhoods. And so I partnered with our Hispanic Chamber to implement a program with National League of Cities focused at small businesses, what they're calling the Landsar program, to help them sort of understand the processes. That's then caused internally, that person that ran that program has now been hired by the city to run our small business program. So you see these little roots there being, and what you've talked about, the 360, that you got to be continually thinking about it and looking at it from all different perspectives, and how you're going to help, how you're going to cut red tape, all of those things. And so the one-stop shop that was created out of that someone else mentioned, we've done as well. But it is a continual process that you have to look at, and that support, and that we're committed to do there in Fort Worth.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And we need a picture of our capital, Texas Capitol up there too. So
Yeah, well,
at some point.
we might be going there soon. so
346,
we'll have to-
I saw that, yeah.
Rep. Rue, I want to bring you into from Washington. We'll go out to the Northwest. Man, I wish I was traveling to all these places right now. Tell us about Washington, because I know you're a chairwoman, and you're doing a lot with economic development and entrepreneurship, and have been a champion for that. And your state's dealing with all kinds of different issues right now with budget and whatnot. So fill us in on that, because I think that's very interesting when a lot of states are facing similar issues.
Sure. Thank you so very much. Yeah, I'm Cindy Ryu from City of Shoreline, a city of 56,000. We're only 30 years old, so we went through the growth pains, and I served as council member and mayor, longest 4 years of my life. I will never do that again, serving my 8th term in the legislature. So the state of Washington actually did have a major problem with our budget shortfall, because we don't have income tax, and so it's all very regressive fees and other things, taxes, sales taxes, and so on. So, but we did balance the budget this year. Unfortunately, unlike New Mexico, we're not flush with money, so we could not adopt or stand up any new programs, including the Office of Entrepreneurship, which I supported. So, however, we do have a base level funding of associate development organizations, ADOs. Try saying that many times, and trying to get my colleagues to understand what the ADOs do, which are at each county level. And we did maintain, not increase, but maintain the very basic level of funding for each of them this year. And so that's a continuing challenge, because obviously they have to raise funds. Otherwise, they want more than just a part-timer trying to serve, especially the rural communities. We also had a major change at the executive level with a new governor after 12 years. And so the Department of Commerce, we still have a department, which is a good thing, but one of our senators became the commerce director. And so he's abolished all the sector leads, and so we won't know until July 1 as to what the new titles and jobs might be, and how much of a upsetting or change or challenges or moving forward, depending on your position, whether you're keeping a job or not, that will be. So I see it as technical support. I have to come up with a new terminology. So if you have ideas, because we have high tech, and so to be calling it technical support is kind of confusing to many people. So some sort of a new terminology, but definitely looking at consistent commitment. I did prepare a couple, I actually proposed a couple of slides, but obviously the three legs of skilled and adaptable workforce, innovation capacity, as well as the entrepreneurial climate. And one of our high-tech organizations did do a kind of an audit or as to what we're falling short on, because we do have a great economy and a entrepreneurial climate, but I think the key is how do we keep growing them and transition them so that they're not just a startup, but they actually go into that high capacity and very successful, especially feeding the high-tech sector, as well as, of course, the healthcare sector. And I'm concentrating on the providing infrastructure such as broadband, because we are supposed to have received $1.23 billion in BEAD funding. Unfortunately, we're only about the fourth in the nation to be in that process. And so our round one and round two are done, but the round three is on pause because of federal policies right now. So hopefully that gets funded and we can move forward with making sure that the rural communities are just as connected as the Puget Sound communities are.
Well said. Appreciate you being here. And I have one more, and then Morgan will take over, and we'll get to the folks I didn't get to. Taylor V. from Wyoming. We're talking about rural areas. Let's finish with this for a few minutes. Talk about Wyoming, because you guys are trying to diversify what you're doing with entrepreneurship right now. And one of the least populated state and one of the largest states in the union. Can't wait to go.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and everyone else that has done such a fabulous job of hosting this week. It's been a pleasure. I learned a lot. I'll be taking back my own set of thick notes this week. You're on 4, I'm probably on 12. But yeah, so Wyoming is an interesting state, like Jason teed up. We have a large geographic footprint, just under 1 million square miles. We are the least populated state in the union with 585,000 people. And so our economic conditions are very different than all y'all's. Some cities are bigger than, as represented here, are bigger than our entire state. So really what that means for us is we have to take maybe a non-traditional approach. But I do think that non-traditional approach to economic development and supporting entrepreneurs is applicable or can be applied to other contexts. I think really that kind of speaks to some of the other comments that have been made, but we really have to know where we're at right now and what problems our entrepreneurs are facing in our communities too. So I think for us, the really important part is collaboration and having good relationships with the people that are on the ground, but as well as the legislature. So it's relationships across the board that help us understand how we can move the needle. I think for me personally, when I look at economic composition and these big picture sort of approaches to economic development and apply that to entrepreneurship, it's very similar from the state level and state perspective all the way through. And so we are really trying to understand and recognize the role of government and what role we play. Everything that we do is trying to be a catalytic sort of presence and force behind the state. And so what we're trying to do ultimately is set up the systems for success. We want to create the conditions, the economic conditions for new businesses to succeed in the state. And so we prioritize working with our local representatives. If there's a gap in resources, we actually go out and try and find a partner that can solve a portion of that economic environment. or the blend of resources that you need in order for an entrepreneur to go from one stage to another. So economic development is a messy thing. We talk about it locally, we talk about it regionally, we talk about it nationally. It's a blend of interactions that occur, and we have to, I think, as economic developers and supporters of entrepreneurs, I think we have to think more critically about the interactions that are at play. I think it's very easy to talk about best practices, but if your economic conditions like Wyoming's are so different, you can only take a playbook so far where it won't work. And so we're really critical with our approaches and how we take practices and try to apply them within our context. I could probably go on and on, but I know
we appreciate
running over time. So.
Yeah, we appreciate all you're doing there and diversifying your economy there in Wyoming. And I appreciate everyone for chiming in during this great discussion. I'm going to hand it over to my friend Morgan from IEDC to moderate our final panel or discussion here today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jason. And thank you all for being here in Indiana. We are so dang happy to have you here. This is like my favorite group of people that we've been able to work with this week. This is going to be a pretty informal conversation. We will be going about 30 minutes. It's fine if we run over, but I know you all want to get to lunch. Just housekeeping, if you need to pop out, use the restroom, go grab a water, stretch your legs, that's okay. We can talk after. But lunch will be served in Gin Village following the conversation today. But I am going to do some leading questions. I might call on a few people, but this is really a conversation for you all. We've talked about the importance of entrepreneur-led economic development today and then how to do policies to make it happen. But now we're going to roll up the sleeves a bit. And okay, so what does this actually mean day to day for the people doing the work? Taylor in Kansas, we realized that we could Teams each other. We Teams constantly, hey, can you share that job description? Or, hey, I'm stuck on this issue. I don't know how to navigate this. What do you think? So that's really the purpose of this final session here today. So, David, I'm going to start with you. We sometimes get directives of, hey, flavor of the day, population growth is really, really, really important. And then it's, okay, David, what are you going to do about that? How are we going to make it work? And something that you started, 7, 8 years ago, was a partnership for youth entrepreneurship. So can you just kick us off with sharing a little bit about that program and specifically how it actually works? Yeah.
I'm happy to, Morgan, especially since Morgan is such a tremendous member of my team here in Indiana that has really taken the ball and moved it well down the field. And the program that Morgan's talking about in particular, similar to what the Representative Teshka referenced and the governor referenced, we understand that there's a philosophy of just getting more people into entrepreneurship. I'm a firm believer that whatever your first business is won't be your last business, and that that first business might not seem all that grand and amazing, but entrepreneurs don't tend to think in linear ways that it's just this business and only this business. There's more businesses to come and how those evolve. And so we wanted to really think about how we could invest in the next generation of entrepreneurs. And a few years back, actually, about 8 years ago, we started a program in the state called Innovate Within. And it was always designed to be a high school-focused entrepreneurship program. You heard the governor reference junior achievement. I, having gone through 4-H as a kid, called it entrepreneurial 4-H or entrepreneurial FFA. If you went through FFA instead of 4-H, I heard Gloria, our colleagues from Puerto Rico, refer to it as scouts for entrepreneurship. But the idea was essentially to encourage more entrepreneurial thinking at the high school level, whether that was actually starting a new business. Schools need landscaping, schools need school supplies, maybe they have a coffee in-house, maybe they have all these other functions. If they have a CNC machine to train students on how to use a CNC machine, that CNC machine could easily be used to have the students build a business. And at the same time, we wanted to kind of create a little bit of again, showing some of my small town rural roots. The county fair every summer was like the big deal if you were in FFA and 4-H, and everybody got ribbons and everybody competed. And so we wanted to bring a little bit of competition and excitement around programming that happened throughout the year, but then one single event during the summer, which interestingly is 2 weeks from now. We have the state finals for the Indiana Innovate Within pitch competition. In the 7 years since that started, it's gone through many different iterations with nonprofit partners, with universities here in the state, but proud to say that today it's the largest high school pitch competition in the country. And while 2 weeks from now, 10 student-led teams of 1 to 4 team members will be pitching. At the start of this process, at the beginning of the year, 3,000 student-led teams submitted video pitches for consideration to a panel of judges, and then there were regional competitions all over the state. Representative Teshka has judged a few of those as well. It involves the local community, and there's a couple different things that come out of this. One, and by the way, not all of these are amazing business ideas, and that's okay. They're high school students. They're thinking about entrepreneurship for sometimes the first time. We literally get to see light bulbs going off. I can do something. I can create something. Somebody will pay me for it, and suddenly I can be in business. But the mindset shift, I think, is what's really important for us. Getting more young people to think entrepreneurially, that's super important. I think the second piece, though, is that many of these students get to know Representative Teshka. They get to know Notre Dame University. They get to know their local SBDC and the mayor and the county commissioner and others. And they, for whatever reason, that breaks through, I think, in a way that they're excited then to be connected to these people in their local community who are invested in them and their success. That is very tough to quantify, and we're in economic development. I try to, keep Representative keeps us honest on making sure return on investment is there for the use of taxpayer funds as it should be. But these students learn about the resources in their community and the people who are invested in their future in a way that, for whatever reason, they hadn't really realized before, and they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to invest in it, and that's a super exciting thing for us. And so I think collectively over the course of this program, and sometimes we have students that go through it multiple years, sophomore year, junior year, senior year, we have had wild successes. Some of the students literally are running their businesses today. One of the youngest people in the country to ever receive venture capital came out of one of these competitions. But again, that's not the point. The point is the mindset. The point is working with teachers. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of students. One of the best things that we decided to pivot to with our partners at the Started Up Foundation who do this work is to also start focusing on teachers. It's great if we can get 3,000 students, but as you all know, I'm the son of a teacher. I actually have my own mother as my teacher. Teachers see 20, 30, 40 students every single year, and if the teacher can be entrepreneurial and the teacher can instill entrepreneurial principles in their class, we have this amazing multiplier effect of hopefully bringing more entrepreneurs for the next decade and 2 decades and 3 decades to come here in the state of Indiana.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. Steve, I'll pop over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to kind of build on what he was just mentioning. So the first thing is supporting trades is a great way to encourage entrepreneurship because you get a training in HVAC and then you work in a large HVAC company and then you start with your own truck and trailer, go from there. Non-compete language also, what states have reformed non-compete language. And then I wanted to say something that's going to sound a little bit silly, building on this, but I want all of you to think about it. It has to do with teachers and students. I've got 3 boys, high school, junior high, and grade school. And obviously, like I told you earlier, I was always trying to train my employees to start their own business. I've been doing that with my boys too. Where is their first group of customers? Their classmates. What happens if they get caught trying to sell something, if they bring candy? They get in trouble. What kind of mindset are we building in grade school, junior high, and high school The minute I try and sell you something, I'm talking about candy, stuff that's legal. I'm not talking about anything illegal. And they get in trouble. So what are they taught? Not to do anything creative, not to do anything entrepreneurial. So that's something I want to challenge all of us with too.
Great call out, Steve. Taylor?
Thank you. So this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I even pitched you on something about engaging generations yesterday. But I'm a product of one of those entrepreneurial youth activations. It was called Youth Entrepreneurs of Kansas. And it was a model very similar to sports. You have your city competition, you have your regional competition, then there's a state activation at one of our major employers. And so I went to state in entrepreneurship. I wasn't a great student in anything else. But when I got into state, I was like, well, hold on, this is actually pretty cool. And then I started to think, could I take my business further? But around the same time, one of the projects, my mother owned a construction company in the Midwest, they extended the payment terms on it. And at the end of state, I vowed I would not start a business because I wanted someone signing my paycheck. I wanted to create that stability for my family. And I always wanted to ensure that my children had back to school clothes, had consistency, had accountability from me as a parent. And so when we talk about that narrative that we are creating for our children, it does live in these programs, but it also lives in the way they hear their parents and the adults around them speaking about entrepreneurship. And so that's why I'm really passionate about the storytelling element and really showing up for the others. Taylor hit the nail on the head. These models many times can't be picked up and placed because there's so much of a human element behind how we position and maintain the narrative behind the entrepreneurial mindset to continue to engage the generations. On the teachers front, we have a really cool program. It actually is what youth entrepreneurs morphed into in the Stand Together family package, I don't know, called Empowered. In Empowered, it has a network I'm a part of. It's free to sign up, but it has resources for teachers to be able to infuse entrepreneurial mindsets within different curriculum. So how do you teach it in math? How do you teach it in science? But then also grants and different things. So it's been really cool to share those out with the network as just another touch point to maintain that narrative.
Great, thank you, Taylor. I've heard a few people mention they grew up in small businesses, they own businesses themselves. Can I just see show of hand, who is that the case for at the table? Who owns a business or grew up in a small business? I am not shocked that's a pretty strong show of hands. Thank you for that. Corianne.
Yeah, I just wanted to build upon a couple of those points. So I think, one, thank you for the introduction, for hosting us, the IEDC, Right to Start, Jen. I come from the National League of Cities. For those who aren't familiar, we are a 100-year-old membership organization for cities. So we represent the needs, the desires, the forward-looking futures of America's cities, towns, and villages all across the country. Shout out to my colleagues, Safaya Fauzi and Kinga Taraski sitting in the back. Kinga is an intern. She just joined us last week, so this is her first foray into this, so jumping right into it. But one thing I wanted to point out is I think we are in a really unique position in this room because, to your point, Morgan, almost everybody at this table is invested in entrepreneurship in some way, shape, or form, or has a background in it. And what we've noticed at our work with the National League of Cities is the cities that we tend to engage with on this topic are those that have already some momentum behind this initiative or this support, or they have folks at the table who have been entrepreneurs or recognize the importance of this. We have a gap in our participation of those smaller communities that don't have an economic development department or don't have, maybe a local chamber of commerce. And so I just want to point that out, is that I think like Right to Start's initiative of the statewide Office of Entrepreneurship is so necessary, because in lieu of that local level support, providing that support is definitely needed. And to the representative's point to my right about being acting punitively in a lot of ways about the way some people, their first interaction in entrepreneurship. One thing we focused on in one of our programs was informal entrepreneurs, those people operating without licensure, those people selling baked goods out of their own kitchen or, operating a business out of their garage or van. And when city government knocks on their door to say, like, how can we help you, that's often very intimidating. So there's a lot of barriers we have to overcome and partnerships that we have to create at a community level to bridge that divide and to get those entrepreneurs comfortable with working. And we're missing a lot of opportunity by, working directly through City Hall and not recognizing those folks operating informally as entrepreneurs as well.
Thank you for that. And I think one of the major takeaways there was knocking on a door and saying, hey, I'm the government, I'm here to help. Doesn't always work, right? And Jennifer, I'll get to you in just a minute, but first I want to pop over to Institute for Justice. So, Corianne, you mentioned all of these licensing and permitting issues. Tell us more about the Cities Work program. You got a little bit of a shout out earlier. How does that work? How can they work with you? And what does that actual implementation process look like, ideally?
Thanks. So my name is Jenny McDonald. I work for the Institute for Justice, where I lead an initiative called Cities Work. And we are completely free of charge to cities because we're a nonprofit. So we come in, we partner with cities, we help them understand what the regulatory barriers to entrepreneurship might be. And we get into the really nitty-gritty things like your grease trap requirements or the process to get a permit to be a temporary food vendor at an event and things like that. So we help cities understand some of the regulatory barriers that they have. We help cities talk to entrepreneurs so that they can understand the pain points from the entrepreneur's perspective. And then we help cities implement reforms to make that better. So we've partnered with over 24 cities now across the country, from small towns like Los Alamos, New Mexico, to the city of Philadelphia, where we're working with the mayor on how to make it easier to start a food-based business. And so each partnership with a city looks different because every city has its own unique challenges. But what we do see are themes, right? That it is too expensive very often to start a business, that there are too many different steps. So one of the things that we do is we count every single step, permit, fee, in-person requirement, agency involved, and things like that, which again just kind of shows that whole picture. I think someone mentioned earlier, that an individual $100 fee may not seem like a lot, but when you add it up, in most cities it costs over $5,000 to start a typical brick and mortar business, and that's just in the fees. It has nothing to do with the equipment or hiring folks or any of the other capital that you need. So our focus is really how can we take things away so that we're not piling on and so that it just is much more accessible, particularly for folks from disadvantaged backgrounds, to start the business of their dreams. So we would love to talk with any of y'all if you're interested in partnering with us. And we have my colleague Tom over here across the table. We have lots of resources. We can show other examples of what we've done with cities as well. And we'd just be happy to have more conversations about what we do.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. I'll pop over to Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer McGrell, the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Center for the Advancement of Science and Technology, and I wanted to build off kind of two comments that Corianne made and then something you said, Morgan. Corianne pointed out that it's really important for especially state governments to look outside of their urban arenas and start looking into their rules. And then Morgan, you made a comment of, it's great when the government goes into some of our communities and we knock on the door and say, hey, we're here to help, and we've done it without building those relationships or trust. And I think those of us at this table have a very unique opportunity to leverage our programs and look outside of those urban cores, especially those of us looking at the traditional startups and the scalable high-tech businesses. And I will say something in Oklahoma, there's been a lot of talk from Governor Hutchinson over here and several of you about accelerators. And about 5 years ago, the governor of Oklahoma and the state legislature created a Oklahoma Accelerator program. And it provided funding for 3 incubator or accelerators across the state in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and then lumping everybody else in our rural communities. And through an open RFP process, what we wound up with is our 2 urban arenas. We selected national providers to operate those programs. But obviously, there was no national program that wanted to do the rural program. And the only proposal that came in was from our Oklahoma Farm Bureau. And we have been incredibly impressed and have been able to take a rural accelerator program and leverage that to create such unique opportunities to build out an innovation ecosystem to where they're actually running 2 cohorts a year in 2 different programs, and an ag tech specific and then an industry agnostic specific. But I will say the most important piece of it is they have been able to start building out the rural innovation ecosystem in each quadrant by bringing together those local resource partners, the cities, the local chambers of commerce, some of the church organizations, the schools, our Oklahoma Career Tech, trusted partners who now have access to all sorts of resources via straight collaboration, and we are seeing massive results. And the one fact that they threw out to me and they talk about time and time again is those of you that have significant rural communities, the USDA says that in your farm communities, over 93% of your farms have to have income from outside of their farming operations. So when we talk about entrepreneurship and innovation, those communities are incredibly ripe for building opportunities. And so if you need any of that, I'd be happy to share, but do not overlook the partnerships of those unlooked markets within your communities.
We talk about trust and collaboration a lot in Indiana because the working with local organizations like the Farm Bureau, I mean, it just makes it so much easier, right? Having that trusted partner. And Commissioner Story, over in Jackson County, you guys have a fantastic relationship with your Chamber of Commerce. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be, how you leverage them specifically in that trust building?
Yeah, and again, thanks from Indiana and from Jackson County. I just want to point out that you have 2 Drews from Jackson County here today, and we have a 3rd commissioner, he's Matt, so it's like 2 Drews and a Matt all the time. So if you guys call and ask for Drew in Jackson County, you got to be very specific which one. So before serving as county commissioner, I served as city council in the city of Seymour. And one of the things that we have talked about in the city of Seymour and Jackson County is we don't have economic development strategy in our county. It's not exactly true. It's not been necessarily the government's responsibility. What we have had is fantastic relationships over the years with, we have two thriving Main Street organizations in our downtowns. We have a Chamber of Commerce that has been extremely instrumental in sort of developing foundation around, just around connection. We are agribusiness centric in Jackson County and rural Indiana. And so I think what you would find in our government makeup is that we happen just to be connectors and not necessarily policymakers. So maybe our policy is not to have policy, and it is in fact to have, really to have connection. Drew's shaking his head yes. So, although I'm super interested, like, what do our partners in small business and in entrepreneurs, what do they think that we should be doing? I don't know that we've had a ton of those questions. Now, Commissioner Markle had mentioned earlier that, Spark. Spark is, well, it's the boldest project, maybe in southern Indiana, but certainly in Jackson County. It's the boldest project that is happening for us. And really, it started out as just sort of the Chamber's dream. And then they did a fantastic job of kind of shepherding a ton of stakeholders or potential stakeholders in believing in that dream. And so I think what's been really great is, as government, our government role at the county has been, let's remove red tape. And oh, by the way, we're going to give you some funding that the federal government gave to us that we would love to give back to them, but we have to take it, so let's give it kind of back out into the world. And so that Spark is going to be a co-working space. It's going to be a, it has some venture, so some funding around trying to get things off the ground. Like it is that connection. So again, our policy is not to have policy, but to maybe help try to dream a little bit.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. In the spirit of asking for help and collaboration, Melissa, you are brand new in your role. Tell us a little bit about how it's going, how we can help, because we're all here behind you.
So thank you so much for inviting me today. And I'm brand spanking new. Thank you to Right to Start for implementing the office. We are the first office of entrepreneurship in the state of Nevada. Funny, in my previous role is I followed the bill very closely, and it was very similar to our former Office of Small Business Advocacy, and we've been collaborating a lot with our stakeholders. And the biggest help I need is connecting with all of you because I'm learning so much. My mindset has shifted, and I want to bring best practices from each and every one of you into our state. With that said, and I'm shifting a little bit, but one of the best things that I've been able to discover in my previous role, and I'm going to continue implementing, is we're finding where are those gaps, where are the barriers, where's the red tape? And the way that we were able to do that is by going into our rural communities, our small communities, urban communities, and hosting these community events where we do invite our legislators, we invite Lieutenant Governor to participate, and it's an event for them to sit down, be quiet, and listen to what the challenges are straight from the community. And we could do as many surveys to our small business owners, but they're not maybe too honest in these surveys. But when we hear it straight from their mouths in their communities, it becomes an open dialogue, and we really get to the issue from not having enough general contractors coming into our rural communities to even fix the roof or electrical issues. So how do we eliminate these barriers in working with Institute for Justice? She's a rock star, by the way. In storytelling, really, what do we need to grow these small communities? Barbers has been an issue in our state. We're one of the most regulated states in this country. Fact checked by Jenny. And what else? Having these conversations, we see having an equestrian business is difficult. Having a workforce is the same across the board. So that has been one of the most successful things. Language Access, working with Secretary of State, he's now implementing multiple languages onto his website, working with Lieutenant Governor, increasing agritourism. What do we need to do to encourage more of these farm to table events and eliminating those barriers so that they could continue working? But that's just me short. But I'm really excited to be in this role, and it's such an honor and privilege to be surrounded with you, and each and every single one of you. I'm having a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the crew, Melissa. We're happy to have you here. We are nearing our end time, but I wanna just save space. If anyone has not had a chance to jump in yet, or if you are just really stuck on an issue back home and you want to pose a question to the group, now is the time, or else we'll let you out for lunch. Does anyone want to jump in? Everyone's like, lunch, please.
Can we hear from Dr. Gray a little bit about California?
Yeah, of
We
course.
got to get to one of our bigger states before we walk out of this room in our country. I know you've been very active and very successful and have grown quite a bit since you've been in that role.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So it's actually, I would like to say, first of all, thank you for the invitation to participate today. And I have several pages full of notes as I have been listening to communities around the country. We're blessed in California to have 4.2 million small businesses, providing a little bit more than 7 million jobs in the state. 49.1% of those businesses are diverse businesses, and those diverse businesses contribute $192.8 million to the economy that is now the fourth largest economy in the world. Yet, we have communities, rural communities, pockets across the state that still struggle to have their residents participate in the economy at the same rate as those in our coastal towns. So we've experienced quite a bit over the 4 years since the governor appointed me to my position. And I just want to talk about a couple of things that are top of mind for me. I heard someone say a couple of days ago that entrepreneurs are the new ambassadors. And I was really thinking for California, that is true. Our small businesses export $75 billion a year. 43% of California's exports are from small businesses. So they literally are the ambassadors to many other countries where they are exporting. Also, I heard about a program that's developing with non-dilutive capital. Was that OKC? Was that the accelerators in Oklahoma? All right. Well, we run a program in California called Accelerate California, Inclusive Innovation Hubs, and we've got 13 innovation hubs. Following, or maybe leading, since you all are just setting yours up now, I was very intentional with my team in making sure that we put those innovation hubs in rural areas. We've got far north in the state, and each one of them has a different concentration. So far north, they're working on agribusiness and sustainability. Central Valley, we've got a water, energy, and technology center. We even have in the Inland Empire, which is out in the desert area, a neurodiversity hub that's focused on neurodivergent entrepreneurs and creating space for them. And then the last thing I would say is that we were very creative with our state small business credit initiative funds, and we reorganized our network. We now have 200 across all of our programs providers that are providing technical assistance, and knowing that that was a very difficult name, we rebranded our entire network to Scale, Success, Capital Access, and Leadership for Entrepreneurs, for exactly that reason. In government, we have a tendency to name stuff for where the money comes from. Small businesses don't care about that. They want to get help, right? And if we're going to be successful, we have got to scale small businesses. Of all of the businesses in California, 98% of them employ 20 or less. So our charge in California is to scale those businesses. If we could get 25% of that 4.2 million to just add 3 jobs, we could add 3.1 million jobs to the community. So the question I think that we should be asking is, how do we get our small businesses to scale?
Wonderful. Thank you. Any final questions before I turn it over to Victor to wrap up? Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I just want to give another shout out to the ESOs. I know Corey brought it up. I had one actually call me while we're in the midst. I said, sorry, I can't take it. But I think we do have an opportunity to build trust by being trustworthy. So we are states, we are city governments. We do have that ability to create line item ongoing funding. And I think as we bring out these groups together, we do have to put some skin in the game to that.
I'm going to go rogue. Sorry. I know I'm standing between you and lunch, but Taylor, you have a ESO capacity building program. We're having a discussion about how we actually get this stuff done. Can you tell us a little bit about how your program operates, and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah, so one day Morgan teamed me a playbook, your ecosystem builder playbook, I believe it was. And so we started deploying those things out to our ESOs and wanting to start engaging them in the economic development space a little bit more and expanding the creative mindset that they bring. And what we noticed is that we were making a lot of assumptions about the capacity of our ESOs. We had assumptions that they could take in $1 million plus grants, but they don't even have any employees. They're all volunteers. We had just so many wild assumptions. So from that playbook, we created a practical framework that assesses the maturity of an ESO. It starts with, there's emerging, but we also created a framework for where and how we engage with each of the levels. So unless you're established or leading, funding isn't the conversation we have. It's true building of the infrastructure of your organization, its capacity. It is. And so I talked a little bit about it on my panel the other day, but that's helped us. It's helped us build stronger ESOs. It's helped us understand what they're even teaching our entrepreneurs. I sat through an accelerator cohort the other day, and I was like, please don't say that again. Let's rework that. That was actually changed 4 years ago. So it gave us a little bit of reassurance in what we were funding was actually able to be mobilized and leveraged by the entrepreneurs. From there, our delegation that we brought here was a component of that. How do we give our ESOs a global view of success? So we think we're darn good, but compared to what? And compared to who? So let's see what else is out there, what else they are doing. And then the last component of the cohort is why do our ESOs even start or exist? Those grassroots initiatives, usually out of frustration, usually out of not being able to navigate it themselves. So they say, well, I'll just do it myself like an entrepreneur would. So how do we create ESOs not so much out of that survival mode, out of frustration, out of anger, but out of the ability for true opportunity, true expansion for the state, mobilization of a specific sector, target industry, whatever it might be. So those are the things that we've done and pulled in some really great partners. So, if I'm not here one day, that work continues when I'm not here one. It continues with our partners. We have anchored it in those organizations. We have one ESO that they own their own building, a 16,000 square feet facility. Only one in the state. But how do we get more of our ESOs and view them as entrepreneurs, because they need to build resilient businesses. They need to leverage that framework. So that's a little bit about our cohort.
Perfect. Thank you, Taylor. All right, Victor, let's bring it home.
Bring it home. This is also we're getting close to the whole end of this amazing conference, and thanks to David and Morgan for just your tremendous leadership and even bringing all of us together into Indianapolis for this week of activities. Thank you. I jotted down some quick notes in terms of my takeaways of themes that came out of this discussion for the last few hours. And I'll just share those and would love your thoughts too on those. One is just the commonalities that you hear. So many themes and challenges and issues that public sector leaders in entrepreneurship are dealing with, whether at the city or the county or the state level. They're all very, very common sets of issues. And so much of this work, I think a lot of you probably feel pretty alone in the work you do most of the time. And so I think the commonalities are pretty striking about the challenge to deal with, whether it's in terms of the issues you're dealing with, the bureaucratic processes internally you're dealing with, the fiscal issues you're dealing with. They're all very striking how the commonalities are. Second is the theme of connections and bridging divides. So much of the work in entrepreneurship and the work you do seems to be about bridging those divides between rural and urban, between different types of communities, communities of color, between the tech and the non-tech communities, between economic development and non-economic development issues, between different aspects of government and different agencies, and that bridge this work. This work is around entrepreneurship is very much a bridging function, and that came through loud and clear, especially in terms of the need of having to build trust into the communities on the ground. I think a lot of the work is also about bridging the grass tops and the grassroots together. So you can't, very challenging because entrepreneurship is very much a hand-to-hand, person-to-person grassroots activity, yet the work we have to do is at the grass tops, and how do you shape the grass tops to affect the grassroots is actually really hard. It's not an obvious thing to do. The third theme I took away was just the importance of education and knowledge and information. That seemed to be woven throughout, and typically when we talk about entrepreneurship policy, education is always thought of as like a whole other body of work, because it is. And touching education is almost like one of those third rails, right? Like you don't touch that. You got a lot of people coming at you once you go in there. But I think a lot of the core issues we deal with in entrepreneurship, we can't address them without going into education. And I think we all that seemed to be a recurring theme throughout the entire morning, was just the importance of education, whether it's at K through 12 or collegiate or community college or even ongoing adult education. These are just really highly recurring themes. And the fourth was just the sheer vast amount of experimentation happening at the local and the state level, especially at a time when the federal system is dealing with its transitional issues. You haven't heard this phrase as much, but back when I was younger, people talked a lot about America as the laboratory of democracy, focusing on the state and the local levels, the sort of the bubbling up of interesting new ideas and projects and experimentation. And those that would work would bubble up and get adopted by other cities and states, which would end up getting adopted at the federal level. And I think that mechanism somehow is sort of not worked as much in recent years because people look to the federal level to solve everything, but I feel like there's a real need now. There's a vacuum in leadership in the country, and it is the states and the cities that are leading the way for the country. And so that experimentation, I think, is critical. So those were the common themes I saw throughout the morning, and I think there's a real interest in keeping those themes going forward. I wanted to share a bit about future plans and what we do. I guess I'll pose this question to the group. I'd love to see a show of hands. How many of you would be interested in continuing this kind of cross-national state and local dialogue to hear learnings and experiences and ideas from others? Okay, well, wide interest in doing this. I don't think anyone said no, so thank you. So we would like to keep doing this. What that looks like, we have to figure this out. This is actually a phenomenal launch point to do this more. And so heading into next year, we would love to work with you on figuring out what that looks like. How do we reconvene a group like this, expand it even more? There's probably easily hundreds of people at the state and local level across the country that are doing this work and are interested in connecting with this. We talked a bit about the National Entrepreneurship Leaders Network we started, where we took the top state leaders in entrepreneurship, and that we're going to be expanding it eventually to cities and counties. We're trying to get the state part right first, but within the coming year, we definitely want to make sure that we expand this even further. And so we'd love your thoughts and support and interest in continuing that work too. And then finally, I will add this thing that we launched yesterday. I mentioned it briefly with Governor Braun. So yesterday we launched a national campaign as part of America's 250th birthday, the startup birthday of America, as we call it, because this was the great startup nation. And the idea with this effort is that there's a chance to renew America's entrepreneurial promise. I think one of these deeply held issues in American life is that this is an entrepreneurial country at heart. And yet that issue often kind of gets buried, and there's clearly, we're at a moment in this country where there's a bit of pessimism potentially and distrust in where we are, but we can fix that. And it's the entrepreneurs are the ones that build the future. The entrepreneurs are the ones that take us forward. And there's a chance to reconnect the issue of entrepreneurship to the future of America, our prosperity, our shared strength as a society. And so the campaign is called America the Entrepreneurial. like America the Beautiful, and you can hear the music in your head as you're saying that. And we want to be able to open up this campaign to everybody, and this becomes a chance for every government agency, every community, every organization, every individual that wants to be able to participate and make it their own, host activities, host programs, be part of America's 250 celebration by lifting up the entrepreneurial spirit in America. We want to provide that platform for you. So the website is americatheentrepreneur.org. We've already launched this with a National Advisory Council. Governor Hutchinson is on that. Steve Case, Brad Feld, Andrew Yang, Mayor Betsy Hodges, formerly of Minneapolis, the CEO of Inc. Magazine and Fast Company, founders of great companies, from the founder of Dermalogica to the founder of Bonobos, to the founder of Duo Security, Doug Song, who was here at this conference earlier, and a number of other great Americans involved. John Bridgeland, who was the former White House domestic policy advisor. We've got some great Americans on this council, but it really is going to be a 250 for the people, lifted by entrepreneurs, supporting entrepreneurs, and we encourage you to join that. And this is going to be a wide open campaign, and the goal by the end of 2026, after we have a year's worth of parties around entrepreneurship and activities, is to get the issue of entrepreneurship onto the map in America as an issue that's fundamental to all Americans, not just the folks at this conference and not just the entrepreneurs themselves. It's something that everybody will benefit from. So I would like finally just to thank all of you for being here. This is the first ever gathering of this kind, and it's just we weren't sure how it would go. We took on a lot. It was one of these things where it's like entrepreneurs, you dive in, you think, well, someone needs to do this, and it became you look around and it ends up being us. And but then you made the effort to come, and it's such a remark. You all came from many long distances, from very busy schedules, and you made the time to do it, and so we're extremely grateful to you for that. Thanks again to our amazing hosts in Indianapolis, David and Morgan, and thanks to the team at Right to Start for putting this on. Our Chief Operating Officer, Kim Lane, who is also the Executive Director of this national campaign we're putting together, and our Chief Government Affairs Officer, Jason Grill. And then Henry Miller was around here earlier. He may have left. Henry is our Head of Communications and PR, but thanks to him. Again, thank you all. Wonderful to be here, and look forward to doing this again sometime. Lunch.
Yeah, lunch. Lunch is available in the Gen Village area. There is open networking space if you'd like to continue the conversation, but no pressure if you need to catch a flight. Thank you all.